Today is March 2nd, 2008. We're in Glen Meadow, which is in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. And for the Jewish Historical Society, we're interviewing Paul Bloom. So I'd like to begin, Paul. Would you tell us something about your family, Meyer and Ann, and your birth here in Springfield? Did Meyer and Ann come? Where they?
Let me talk to you first about how they came here. In the days that they met each other in Europe, it was Lithuania, they were having the Russian-Japanese War. My father was a yeshiva bocher. His father was a farmer. And my mother was a family, my grandfather on her side was a Hebrew teacher. The wife was a sickly woman, and they had 5 daughters and 2 sons. And they knew that one of the sons would probably be taken into the army. And just at that time, they had a rabbi who was from their town who came to this Springfield, Rabbi Rappaport. And Rabbi Rappaport wrote back to my father and said, the grandfather said, Yitzchok, there's a Jewish colony here in Springfield. They don't have a Hebrew teacher, and it's going to grow, and we suggest that you come here and be the Hebrew teacher for the town. Start it. We just gave them an opportunity to take my uncle, Benny, who would never made a good soldier. He'd been the first guy to fall down and die, to go with his father to America, and left my grandmother and her rest of the family there. Well, to support them, my mother ran a bakery. And she used to tell me the old story about the village that come on Friday, they'd have the ovens were hot. All the women in town would bring on their food for Saturday so they could keep it warm in the ovens overnight. Well, my father apparently came in to get some rolls or bread or something in the bakery. Saw my mother, talked to her, saw her a few more times, fell in love, and they decided to get married. Well, they're going to get married, what's to do? He was also, at that time, 18. Well, that's perfect for the Army. And he wasn't ready for the Army, so they decided to come and visit my grandfather in Springfield. So they got married, and a few months later they left for Springfield. She used to tell me by that time she was pregnant, and she remembers crossing a river with the packages on her head, pregnant, the water up to her neck, to cross to the German side, where with a few dollars of bribing the money, they were let through. They came to England, where we had the Marx family. They were relatives. They took care of them for a few weeks, put them on a boat, and sent them to America. Got to America, they came to Springfield because Zeta was there. Well, they couldn't speak English. It was a tough time. And what did you do in those days? You became a peddler. You could only show the products, sell them, and didn't have to talk. Well, my father did that for a few, but that wasn't enough of that. He decided he'd go into the umbrella repair business.
Which kind? Metal?
Umbrella
repair business. And at that time, my sister was born. She was born around 1906.
What was her name?
Irene. But in those days it was Heike. But she had to have an Americanized name by the time she was 5, so she became Irene. And 2 years later, my brother Chaim was born, but that became Herman. And 2 years after that, 2 years after that, my brother Yankov, that became Jack. And I came along 5 years later. My name was Philip, but she didn't like Philip. It became Paul. So that's how the family came.
What's
your
the
Hebrew name? Hebrew name? What's your Hebrew name?
Feivel.
Feivel.
Well, in the meantime, they were sending pennies and nickels and dimes to save to get the rest of the family over. And a few years later, they had accumulated a few $100s, and they brought over the rest of my grandmother, the 4 other girls, and the younger son. Those sisters became Sarah, Sadie. Rochke became Rose. Heike became Ida. Louis stayed Louis. And my grandmother was Celia. So they came over and settled up. Well, in the meantime, my father was always an entrepreneur. As soon as they saved up $50, he bought a house. In those days, you could buy a house for $500, put $50 down, and you were a house owner. But he wouldn't keep that. Within a year or two, he'd find a house that was worth $1,000, sell his house for $750, and he'd buy the $1,000. Well, by the time about 1916, when I was born, he was beginning to accumulate houses, and he'd bought a 6-family house on what was known as Holyoke Street, because it was the street that went to Holyoke. And it was right across the street from Gray's Avenue, where we had the first synagogue, Gray's Avenue Synagogue. And my father, who was a chazan in the old country, became a chazan at the Gray's Avenue shul, the first one. And so when I was 3 years old, he decided by this time he'd moved up to a point where he wanted to get a house in Forest Park. Forest Park was then practically like out in the country. All right? Out in the country. But they used to call him the Yankee because he moved to Forest Park. Well, he bought a house in Forest Park, and I remember we had a milk company by the name of Mallory Milk next door, and he'd even charge them rent to bring through the wagons through our yard, through our driveway. And so that was on Pomona Street.
In Forest Park.
Yeah. And then he had that
What
for a
was the
few
number?
years, and I got started school in White Street School. My mother said I was 5, I was only 4, but she wanted to get me into the school. And we were there a few years, and my father found someone to buy his house on Pomona Street, so he moved up to West Albert Street. And then he found a better house on Rittenhouse Terrace, so he sold the West Street, moved into Rittenhouse Terrace.
Do these houses still exist?
What they?
Are the houses still around?
Oh yeah.
What's the numbers? Do you know the actual numbers?
The Rittenhouse Terrace was 32, that I remember. The Pomona Street's still there, and the West Albert Street's still there. I could go by and find the numbers.
When your family moved to Forest Park, they called him the Yankee.
Yeah,
you mean the Jewish community considered him the Yankee?
There were very few Jews up here.
Do you remember, can you tell us about that?
They didn't have a synagogue, but there were enough Jews to have a minyan. And Frank Zirkin, who was a furrier, and his brothers were all furriers, let them use the front living room as their shul. It was on Dickinson Street, not far from the corner of where all the streets meet.
The X.
From the X, maybe. I think it's either the first or the second. I think it's the first house.
That's not still there.
Yeah, it's still there. I think it's still there. And so that was the beginning of Kadima.
That was the beginning in this furrier's office.
In his house.
His house. Okay.
And my father davened for them a couple of years, and then they, for Yontif by that time, they had a place on corner Dickinson. It was like a hall over a store. I forget the number of it, but like it's still there. And they davened there for a while, and then as the community grew, and we moved up to West Albert, and downstairs, which is like one street away. They took the hall that's over the corner of Sumner Avenue, White Street, and Sumner Avenue and White Street. There's a corner, it's a big, and there's a lot of stores around the area. And they davened there. I remember going as a kid there. I must have been about 7 years old, 6, 7. Then they decided they wanted to start building a show. So around 1924, I think it was.
Earlier.
Yeah. By this time, we had enough Jews in Forest Park to feel that we could run a show. So we bought this property on Oakland Street. And the property was owned by the fellow that ran Strathmore Paper Company. And they just finished building the Trinity Church across on Sumner Avenue. Well, we had one of our board of directors was a fellow by the name of Harry Goodman. And he was a friend of Strathmore because he picked up the paper and junk from Strathmore and sold it. And he got Strathmore to sell the property, which is right across from the school, and that's how they got the property. I remember they built the lower section, and in fact I went to the Hebrew school here. They had a rabbi at that time, Biarsky, and he used to, in fact, I still get a kick out of it. Harry Goodman's son, Nurik, is here too with his wife. And every time he sees me, he reminds me that I was the wild kid in the class. I'd be running around and the rabbi would try to catch me to make me sit down and study. And so we built, so my father, to be close to the shul, because otherwise it was a mile distance, bought a house on Oakland Street, which was right next to a big brick building that was a tenement house. And he decided to build a bunch of garages there. He now had about a half a dozen properties, a four family, a 2 family, and this was giving enough money. He figured if he build the garages and rent them, he could retire from the umbrella business. So he built the garages. In one corner we had a repair station, a repairman. The other was a polish car to clean it up, and all that stuff. And we rented the rest.
This was on Oakland Street?
On Oakland Street, yeah. It was 120, I think it was 124. Right across the street was Hood's Creamery. Yeah. And so our milk and cream and cheese was right across the street. And that today is a marketplace now. They have a regular general public market. Let me think. Then they built the upper part of this show about 1926, 27, something like that, 28. I forget when they put the cornerstone in, I forget that. But it's there. Let's see. We've had a number of rabbis. One of the things we used to do, getting back to the older days down in the North End, there were several shuls there. The Grays Avenue shul closed out, and they moved to Chestnut Street, where they had a different shul, Beth Israel. There was a Congress Street shul, a little Russian shul on Dwight Street, near Jefferson Avenue. By this time, we now had the Bethel Temple on Fort Pleasant Avenue, which was originally started with German Jews who were a little more conservative and not Orthodox. They had a rabbi there, Rabbi Price, wonderful man. Well, he talked to my father, and he wanted my father to be the chazan for Yontif. So for 10 years, my father was the chazan there at Yontif I remember walking from Oakland Street down to Fort Pleasant Avenue in the morning.
To where?
Fort Pleasant.
To Fort
Fort
Pleasant
Pleasant.
Avenue. They closed up afterwards, sold that building, I think, to a dance group or something, and built their Bethel Temple on the Diggins Street.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, they'd expanded a lot because a lot of people wanted to be conservative.
Why?
Well, it's a growth because of everybody had businesses. You take Main Street. Main Street at that time was probably 80%, 70% Jewish-owned stores. Those stores on, let's take the north end, I'll be on the north side of the arch. There was two brothers. One of them got killed they robbed him and killed him. And the other one was on Dwight Street. They had two hardware stores. Then we had Lincoln Department Store. And we had Berg's Ladies Clothing. And they had Benny's Delicatessen Restaurant on there. Even before that time, before they got onto North, we had Ferry Street. Ferry Street was all Jewish. Saturday night, everybody came down to shop. There was an ice cream parlor owned by the Gaylors, Oscar's family, Oscar Gaylor. They later moved to Hartford. There was Solomon the Butcher. Let's see. Oh, I can't remember all of them. There was, I'll try to remember. Give them to you later.
What year are we talking about? Is
You're
this
talking
19...
about from about, that's probably from about 1908 or 9, right around there, maybe earlier, until they remodeled that whole section, which was probably
60s.
within the last 15, 20 years.
The 60s.
Yeah, we had a Hodgeburg restaurant there where my mother and father celebrated their 25th anniversary. I can't think of all those. Tannenbaum.
What did Tannenbaum have?
Tannenbaum had like a grocery store, and there was a fish market. I can't remember.
All on
that.
Ferry Street, we're talking
On
about.
Ferry Street. It was completely lined with Jewish stores.
And were most of the homes tenements around this area, or were they private homes? How would you describe it?
Mostly were private homes. Or they rented, because at that time, taken between 1900 and 1920, there was thousands and thousands of Jews leaving Russia, coming to America. A lot of them stayed in New York. Some stayed in Hartford. A few of them got up to Springfield. Less than a few got up to Amherst. That was what was happening. So it kind of dwindled down as it got into the suburbs of these big cities. And most of them became peddlers or worked in garment industries. We had a lot of garment industries in Springfield.
Can you list some of them that you remember?
Yes, but you're catching me when I'm not. There was a black fellow who I think made coats. He was on corner Bridge Street, corner Worthington and Chestnut. There was I know them. You'll come to me in a minute. Just I'm thinking about it. And they got into the trades, electrical trades, plumbing trades. There was a glue shines. There was a
Glue shines?
They were electricians, and their kids became electricians too. And sometimes when I hit the name, I can picture him, but I can't remember the name.
Was it hard for Jews to get into different trades? Did you feel at that point there was discrimination or prejudice within Springfield? What was it like being Jewish?
My brother Herman graduated high school in 25, Commerce High School. We all went to Commerce. My sister, my two brothers, me. And somebody called up the Springfield Sand and Tile Company. That suddenly hits me. And it was owned by Reverend, I think, Davis, a minister. And they wanted a bookkeeper to run their office. So the principal, Carlos B. Ellis, may rest in peace, said, I have a wonderful boy, nice fella, knows his bookkeeping calling, but he's Jewish. And Reverend Davis said, I don't care what he is. I don't care if he's Jewish, Chinese. I need a bookkeeper, and if he's good, you send him. He was the nicest minister I ever met, and I was at that time maybe 10, but I used to go and visit my brother. And nicest man in the world. Loved Herman. Really treated him like a son. And he had a big house. And part of his family, his in-laws and all, lived in this great big house. And he owned a great deal of portion of up in the it's right up over Winchester Square. That whole section was his. That's another story. So where were we? And there was Berg's. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some of these names. There was a million of them. There were drugstores. My brother-in-law Bob had a drugstore.
What was it called?
Turney. His brother-in-law Louis Turney had a drugstore there. They moved into from Chestnut to Main Street. That was about.
How about bookstores?
Bookstores.
Bookstores. Well, there was Johnson's bookstore.
Yeah. How about any Jewish bookstores at all? Where would you get prayer books?
I don't recall any Jewish bookstores at that time. They would pick that up in New York. Mm-hmm. In those days, you could go to New York for $3 round trip.
By what vehicle? What would you take?
By the railroad
Train.
$3 on a Sunday, round trip. Every Sunday, the train was loaded with Jews going to New York to buy, to do it, and come back home. Yeah. Things were cheap then. You know, I get back to the doctors at that time. We had Dr. Hannon, who used to go to people in those days. The doctors went to the houses. And when I was born, he came to the house. I was born on the 1st of January. And he told my mother, you know, from now on I'm going to have to charge you $15 for delivery. $15. She says, if that's the case, I'm going to stop having babies, because before you used to charge me $10 and now it's $15. It shows how things were different. Today have a baby is a fortune, before, during, and after. But that's when then we had Dr. Glickman. They named a school after him. He was on the school board, magnificent fellow. His sister was a doctor. She used to take care of Charlotte. And they had another sister, Anna, that was a lawyer. And my mother used to make shirts for Alfred when she came over from the old country. She was very handy. She'd make shirts for them. So because she lived with them temporarily till we could find a place for them to live. And I'm trying to remember some of the stores that were in that area. There were so many of them on the north, and I'd say that 90% of them were Jewish. And on the other side, on this side, the southern side of the arch, there were stores and stores and stores of women's clothing and men's and shoes and everything, and most of them were owned by Jews or run by Jews. There was Al White's, a haberdasher, and he had shoes first to start with, and it was right next to one of our stores. Then when he moved out, we ripped the wall down and enlarged our store and took over his. And he moved into the big, now it's now known as the Massachusetts, Mass Mutual owns it now. That big new building there. I forget the name of it.
Did some of the stores move from Ferry Street to Forest Park, like Broslin's Shoes?
Let's see. When Ferry Street began to fade, Benny's moved to Worthington Street. The fish store and two of the butchers. There was Solomon the butcher. There was he moved up to Dickinson Street, along that side there.
What year are we talking now, approximately?
We're talking about
The 50s?
in the 20s.
But
Oh.
you said Ferry Street was starting to fade. Why was that? In the 20s? You said Ferry Street was declining.
Yeah.
Why?
Because more people were moving to the park.
Why?
Well, they were growing up. They were business. They had a few dollars. And more as more of the immigrants came into the country, they wanted to settle in a less expensive area. And the southern part, or the northern part of Springfield, was beginning to get older. The houses were beginning to, so the people that lived there didn't want to live with the immigrants. They felt that when they'd gotten, their kids were already going to college, some are getting into professions and so on and so on. So they all moved up to a nicer section, which was Forest Park.
Was Forest Park built up yet, or were all these houses being built in the 20s and 30s?
As they were building them, people were moving in.
So this was not a neighborhood filled with non-Jewish people. It was just being developed as a
At
neighborhood.
first, it was all non-Jewish people.
Was it hard for Jews to move in there?
As they moved, Jews moved in more and more. They moved to Long Meadow or Wilbraham or some other place. They always, I remember when I was a kid, walking in woods that today are loaded with houses.
When Ferry Street became a place for immigrants to move to, what kinds of people moved there when the Jews were moving out? Can you
People
recall?
that were moving in were the immigrants.
Give me some kind. Were they like
They were nice people, but
what ethnic groups were they?
their groups were Orthodox.
Orthodox?
Yeah, and they would go to the three shuls that were down.
Jews.
Oh, we're talking about Jews now.
Yeah, Orthodox Jews.
I see.
And they were going to the areas like the Congress Street Shul, the Russian Shul, and the Beth Israel. Those three shuls absorbed them. But as the people moved up into the Forest Park area, they became more Americanized. And while some of them still remained Orthodox and went to Kadima, some of those went to Bethel, or since the thrust was to go further in that area east, they expanded and finally built the Bethel on Dickinson Street. And that made them more conservative. And what do I mean by conservative? The men sat with the women. The services were practically all the same, but they wanted to sit with their wives. And that's why Bethel doesn't have a balcony. Kadima had a balcony where women could sit upstairs, and it was not easy for them. There's a lot of flights to get up to the first floor, and then you had to go on top to the second floor. So the women were happier to be with their husbands.
You're telling us about the merchants on Main Street, and they were going conservative. Does that have to do with
And
that?
as the things got there, that changed. The merchant like Bergs, who am I thinking? Some of the others. Oh gosh, Menard's. He was on right before the bridge.
What did he sell?
There was there were a lot of stores. There was a Broadway office supply, Jews.
How about button shops and sewing shops and zippers and snaps? Notions, what they used to call notions.
Those we had 5 and 10s. We had a 5 and 10 store right across the corner of Bridge Street and Main Street. Big one. That's disappeared. The banks kept changing. Yeah. First they had I think it was the Chapin National Bank, and then that changed a few years later to the Springfield National Bank. And after Springfield National Bank, it became the Valley Bank and Trust Company. And then they moved across the street to the new building and were bought out by Fleet Bank in Boston. And after Fleet Bank was bought out, it became Bank of America. So you see, there's been a chain of that. We had Ben Novak. He had a Security National Bank, which merged in with, forget now.
I want to ask you, was a point you were going to make, if I can ask here, that the merchants needed to be open on Saturday? Was that a factor at all?
That made a difference.
So the Jews...
At one time, earlier Saturday, the Jews closed their stores. But it wasn't long before they opened them up. I think they opened them up probably when they started moving on the other side of the arch. Because the Christian stores that were there, like Forbes and Wallace and Albert Steiger, Macon Packers and Wheat, they were open Saturdays. They felt they were losing a lot of business. So they started opening up Saturdays. Instead of going to show, they opened up the store.
Did that cause a big tumult in the community?
It was a tumult at that time. You couldn't say much out loud because you didn't want the Christian people to hear about it. If it was done by the rabbi or somebody saying, you have to? Well, gee, I'm losing all my business because Saturday is the big shopping day. And if it's shopping day, I got to be there because I can't even. At first, we did this. They'd open the store and wouldn't come. They'd leave the help there. Mm-hmm. The help would run the store for Saturday until they could go. But it didn't take long before, after a year or two, that they were doing the same thing, open to them. And it got to be to the point where, so I'll miss Saturday, I'll go on Yom Tov. Well, if you're going to go on Yom Tov, you're not going to be close to an Orthodox synagogue. You'll want to go to a conservative because nobody looks at you with askance. What are you doing here? See, so that's what happened.
Did that happen to your father?
My father never worked on Saturday.
He didn't have a store.
Well, when he had a store, though, when he had a store, when we had a store, he was already dead. Mm-hmm. I think that tells you what happened was this. When I was going to law school, I was working as a bookkeeper for my uncle and taking care of his books. And I was running the shop. He rebuilt automobile parts. And he'd been in the automobile business for years. And I was running the business, and he was on the road all the time, picking up old parts and sending them in. And I had a workshop where I had the people cleaning them up and polishing them, making them like new, and shipping them and all the rest. So I said I need a week off to study for my exams. He said, I can't spare you. I said, 1 week? No, so I said, I got to do it. So I didn't go for the week, and he got somebody else. Well, afterwards, my father said to me, we lost our property in the Depression. When Depression came, the banks came in and said, Mr. Bloom, you've got this house and your garages and this. You got a lot of stuff, but it's all mortgaged. And in those days, nobody paid on the principal. You paid only interest, and that's it. So really, the property belonged to them because they had all their money in it. So my father couldn't come up with the X thousands of dollars that were needed for all the properties. So he lost them.
All of them?
That's when we moved from Oakland Street to Dickinson Street. And my father, what was he going to do? He had to go back to the umbrella business after maybe being away from it for 8-10 years. So he had to go back to the umbrella business. So I got out, finished with my exams, and I said, Pa, my father said, what are you going to do now? You haven't got the job. And in 1934, there were no jobs. You couldn't find a job. I said, Pa, you know what I'll do? I'll go out with you on the road. I'll have pick up umbrellas. I can talk, I can sell. I'd done that already. So he says, well, what's a kid? I said, what do you care? I'll go with you. Well, I made $48 the first week. Do you know how much money that was in 30? He couldn't believe it. The next week I made over $70. I was 18 years old. Woman wasn't afraid to let me in the house. In those days there were buses and trolley cars and everybody had umbrellas. If you walked into a house in Enfield, Connecticut, there was a thing near the door with 20 umbrellas in it. I'd walk in, smile, tell them what I'm doing, and go through the umbrellas. I'd always come up with something. So
You
I had
fix them on the spot?
we
You'd
took
buy
them
them? You'd buy them or fix, what would you do? You'd repair them. You'd take them and repair them.
back, and afterwards I'd bring deliver them back and get paid. Well, this went on from June, and my brother Herman, who at that time was working at writing, he was an author. He had 12 books published, and he also had 200 short stories. He was a reporter for Newark Evening News and the South something in New Jersey. And doctor said to him, you're sick because you go into a room, lock the door, and for 2 days you can't see him, he's typing. He could write a book in a month. He says, you got to go out and get some exercise, walk, do something. So I said, Herman, good idea. You'll come in the morning, you'll walk with me, we get through at 12 o'clock, go back right, but you'll have a morning of walking. So he did. So he started around the middle of July. So I said, you know, Pa, let's get a store. You can stay inside, take care of the business inside, and we'll bring the umbrellas to you, you fix them, and we'll take them back. Meantime, it'll be easier for you. So we decided to do it. So we rented a store, and on August 11th, 1934,
Where?
we put up a sign, it was Friday, put a sign up on the window, coming September 1st, Meyer Bloom Umbrella Company. Repairs, new ones, blah, blah. That was at the X.
Where at the X?
Exit
Yeah, what
in Forest
street?
Park. In Forest Park.
What was the street address?
What's the street address?
Oh, God. I could tell you.
All right, I'll come to you, or whatever.
You know, you know where, you know Springfield Home?
Yeah.
You know where they have that, where it's like this, Summer Avenue and the, all right, and right there, used to be, they rented DVDs and all kinds of musical stuff. And across the hall, there's a CVS, you know.
On the corner, right in the corner.
Right there.
Yeah,
I forget what the number was.
that's where it was.
Yeah, right in the corner.
Good location.
So we did that, put the sign up that day, went home. My father went to shul Friday night. It was Friday night. And came home, we had supper, talked about what we're going to do Sunday. We'll go to New York, we'll buy umbrellas, get supplies, fill up the store for September 1. My father died that night. He was 47.
Oh my goodness.
But he was so excited about having a store with the boys doing. He could see a future. So he passed away. And the landlord came to me, a fellow named Nathan Nierenstein. He said, I'll give you back your rent money. I said, no, we're going to keep it up. He said, how are you going to do it? I'm 18. You know, I can't even vote. I said, I don't care, we'll manage. Well, we did manage. We stayed there a year and saved up a few bucks.
You and Herman.
Who repaired the umbrellas?
I did. I learned how. Wasn't that hard. My mother knew what to do with them too, because she'd seen what he'd been doing.
What's involved in repairing an umbrella?
The big thing in umbrella is, first you strip it. And then there's a wire that goes around the top that you hook in all the ribs. Okay. Then you put the cover on. You sew it around so it stays there. Then you take each rib and attach it to a corner of the thing. So, and you sew it, and you learn to sew it.
So you did this, or your mother at this shop?
My mother could sew too, so she would help me sew the ribs on.
Can you remember?
How much did you charge for
Yeah.
this?
The average umbrella cover was about $3 to $5. There are different kinds. And a cover could cost you from 70 cents to $1.
Well, how much was a new umbrella?
Those days, umbrellas were about $15,
That's a lot.
$15?
$12.
That much?
See, it was a necessity. Today, they're 98 cents.
Right. So you'd repair the umbrellas, and you could make money. What would you charge then for each
Well,
repair?
if somebody needed a broken rib, it would be $1, $1.50. It's only a labor. The rib is zilch. You had those laying all over the place.
So you still were going on the road, knocking on doors, getting umbrellas. Do you need your umbrella repaired? I'm here.
All right, that was 1934. The next year, I said, there's not enough interaction in the park for an umbrella store. It needs a lot of people walking by. So we closed the store and moved down to Dwight Street, where my uncle Irving Greenberg had a city tire company, and there was an empty store two doors away. We moved in there. It was probably just about the size of this room, and we continued there. Well, at that time, we stayed there until 38, and I passed the bar. I got married in 37, and in 38, I passed the bar. Well, I had a good wife who worked as an assistant manager for Clearweaver Bell Shops. They keep pulling her from store to store. She was an excellent saleswoman. And I went to Boston for a week, studied hard, passed the bar, and I had to get off the road. Now, I'm going to practice. I'm going to open up an office. So I said, you know what we got to do? We got to move onto Main Street. Then we'll have a lot of traffic. So by this time, my brother Herman was in California writing for the movies. So I went on and rented a store on the north side of the arch, right next to Benny's restaurant. It was still there. And the other side was, I feel so badly about this. I can't remember their last name, but there was me, there was Benny's, there was me, and then there was Albert's hardware store. So I went in there and looked it over, rented it, and moved everything over. Now the store was a little bigger. So I said, we got to put something in here. So we decided, they said, why don't you become a haberdashery? I said, no. That means trimming windows all the time. I haven't got time. I got to be practicing law. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put in luggage. So we put in luggage. Yes.
Half an hour. Okay.
We put in luggage and leather goods. So we put in a smattering, and we've got to do some business. So my brother Jack now could stay in, watch the store. My mother used to come down, kind of give him a hand so he could go do something if he had to get away.
What'd you call the business? What was the business called there?
Then it was called Bloom's Umbrella Company.
With the luggage,
Yeah.
selling luggage too.
Then it changed to Bloom's Umbrella and Luggage Company. And I went back to my office, was on corner State and Main, and started doing law business.
What kind of law were you doing?
Title search, torts, divorces.
How hard was it to get started?
How difficult was it to get started as a lawyer?
It was tough.
What year are we now?
That was 1939. I'll tell you, it wasn't so tough because I had a lot of friends in the law business. Louis Hannon, the son of the doctor that brought me into the world, was a very close friend of mine. And before I even started practicing, he was helping me out with other things, interpretate. Sometimes we'd have someone who was Jewish, and I could interpret it because I was good in my Yiddish. So I would interpret in court. So I was getting the feel of it. And opening up, by this time we were fairly comfortable, you know. Every day I'd go down back and forth to see how they were doing. And one day I'm walking by this store, which was next to the Hamden Savings Bank on the southern side. And that's across from Hamden Street. And this fellow, Cohen, standing in the doorway of a store that's being completely rehabilitated.
Okay.
And he says, "Hey, boy, why don't you come over here?" And I said, "What's the story?" He said, "Why don't you move in this one? You'll have all kinds of action." I said, "How much is the rent?" He says, $200. I says, $200. I'm getting $60 for the other one. He says, "But location. I looked around, went back to my brother's. I talked to him about it. He was afraid to take a chance. I wasn't. I went back, and I said, "Cohen, we're going to rent the place."
This was for the umbrella shop.
Umbrella and luggage.
We had a little luggage. And right across the street was United in Luggage and Camera.
Oi.
So I was competing with
Right.
I figured there'd be traffic there because people would go back and forth. They'd see what he's got.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I got back, and I said, "I'll move my office to this building, have an intercom, and if they need me, I'll come down. If they don't, I'll be doing my own business. I'll be close by." Well, to make a long story short, we did the move, and we changed the name to Bloom's Luggage and Bloom's Luggage Center. And we put the umbrellas in front. Well, I had a brother-in-law who was a druggist, I think I told you about him, who was in Amherst at that time working in a drugstore that sold cameras to all the students. And he says, "Paul, get into the camera business. It's a coming thing." He says, "I'll send you the salesman." So in no time, every salesman that he got, he'd send to me.
Oh.
And I started getting camera business. First I started with developing and printing, and then we got into cameras. And meantime, United across the street tells the salesman, "If you go to Bloom's, don't come back." All they didn't know who we were. But if somebody says that to them, what's the salesman do? Right across the street. We had them coming in by the armfuls, and they were very nice. They knew we were greenhorns, and they taught us the business. So about a year later, 6 months later, I says, "Herman, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take the umbrellas and put them in the back and the cameras in front." Oh, and Herman came back from California to help us make that move, just to be around. Is you crazy? Umbrella? Forget it. I moved them. You want to know something? Best thing we did, because now they could stand up front, they could look out the window, they could check the camera. It blossomed.
It bloomed.
So we changed the name
Bloomed.
to Bloom's Camera Center. We took off the luggage. Along comes Kodak. Well, then Herman went into the Army, and he was married at the time. I was married and had a son, and my brother Jack had married, and he had a daughter. And so Herman was single. So he got married. He'd been going with a girl. He got married late. He was 34 in those days. And he got married, but too late. He went into the Army. And while he was there, they were supposed to ship him overseas. He got sick. They put him in the hospital. When he got out, the shipment had gone and got sunk.
Oi.
So they kept him in the office. One day somebody came and says, "Does anybody know how to keep payroll?" He said, "I do." "Okay, come with me." So as a private, he was handling payroll for camp in New Jersey. I think it was Dick.
Fort Dix.
Favorite Dick. for all the generals. They had to come to him for the money. And he did well. He was telling the generals what to do. Well, to make a long story short, he did that all through the war. And there's a lot of stories go with that too, with local people who came up in front of him, and he saved them from going overseas. Yeah. Remember Bobby Fine? He was a clerk of courts here. He died recently, Bobby Fine. He used to say Herman saved his life because the boat he was supposed to go over sank too. And Herman merely took him on as an assistant. So it took him out of the
Pool.
And then they made him, towards the end they found he could write too. They wanted him to take these officers' stories and embellish them so they could get a promotion. He says the generals used stopping in the street, pick him up and give him for a ride so they could talk to him to get his approval that they were entitled to get a ride. It was a crazy world. Anyhow, so he came back, and by this time we were doing a lot of camera business.
How much law are you doing while this is going on? Are you still doing a lot of law?
I did the law for 15 years. And during that time, they asked me to do some work at the Westinghouse, making turrets for tanks. And they said, everybody's got to do something for the war effort. So I said, I'll take a job. One guy used to come in for cameras with a foreman there. He said, I got a job for you, perfect. I go in, it's dusty from all the sanding. I have asthma. I got sick as a dog. At the same time, he tells me that the union is going to fire me and knock my brain out when I go out one night after I'd been there like a month. Why? I was killing the job.
You were working too hard?
Where they used to take a day and a half to do one turret, I was doing one turret in half a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I was speeding up the work. They didn't want that. I was killing the job. So I had to leave in the middle of the night, get out of there. But I was sick anyhow. Doctor had me in bed for about 5 weeks. And he kept coming give me a shot. Remember Jack Wiseman? Maybe you don't. He used to come every day, give me a shot of adrenaline. He said, you got to quit. You can't be everything. He said, you got to quit. So when I was in bed, law business, 5 weeks, 0, you make nothing. You're not doing anything. But when you're in business, you get a check every week, whether you're there or not. So I decided to give it to law business. What if it was a heart attack or a stroke? My family would have nothing. So it was a good thing I did. Anyhow, we built that up. The war came over. Kodak came to me, and I took the agency on, and I found out that one of their salesmen was a schoolmate of mine. So after he'd been with me about a year, he said, Paul, how would you like to be all photographic? Everything. We will give you 8 agencies of Kodak if you will be just photographic.
What does that mean, 8 agencies?
I'll tell you. Everything with X-ray. Industrial, graphic arts, copying machines, audio-visual for projectors thing, amateur. I had that at that point. What were the other 2?
Medical?
I can't forget.
You said X-rays. You said X-rays, right?
Not except X-rays.
Oh,
But
except.
they had other agencies. So I said, that's something. I already had a couple of salesmen on the road, so I figured, what the heck? So I threw everything out. We had a big sale, threw everything out, and got that. At the same time, we opened up a mail order business. In fact, I was just looking at one of our own catalogs. And we used to sell stuff all over the world except Russia. Cameras, supplies, film, to the soldiers. We sent out like thousands and thousands of things. And we charge $1, I think it was, for the catalog, deductible on your first order. We were getting business and shipping all the time. I mean, we advertised in all the photographic magazines. Pages.
How did you get the idea for the catalog?
I don't know.
No.
I saw it probably in the magazines I was getting, seeing page ads for Willoughby's and all these other big companies. And I said, we could do it.
You must have gotten a new space then for this kind of business. You must have enlarged your...
I did. Al White, who had the shoe store next to me, moved across the street to the new building. We tore the wall down, added his space, built a balcony across the top. I had girls typing orders and things like that on one half of the building. It was a walkthrough. And the other side was the bookkeeping and the inventory and everything else. Well, that went on pretty good. I then had about 5 or 6 salesmen up. Then, and copying. They came out with the Verifax copier in 51 or 52 or 53, right in there. And I happened to be at the factory at that time. At least I knew them all. I'd go there at least 4 or 5 times a year. I'd play golf with them. I'd play tennis with them. I was friendly with them. The president used to take me to his golf club. It was a nice arrangement, and we're very friendly. So I said we were doing we took on the copying end of it, and I took on Payco photo processing equipment. Payco photo processing equipment sold the equipment to companies that processed the film. Today you go into a drugstore, they do it. There it was a big process because the film had to go up on hangers, and it was a long job. But there were people who wanted to get into that business. So I had started selling that stuff. It was big money. A complete outfit could be $50,000, $150,000. So I had servicemen. Well, believe it or not, that department came up to, I had 12 people in that department. And the top, and my landlord came along at that time and says, you're doing so well, I'm going to do you a favor, I'm going to double your rent. I said, that's a good favor because now you gave me the opportunity to move out. So what I did was I bought a place on Worthington Street. I had 4 floors and a basement, big room. And we put it in. The top floor was a repair department. The next floor was stocking up merchandise. The next floor was our offices, and downstairs was the retail. In fact, it goes by now.
What's the number on Worthington?
Yeah, 123, I think it is. You'll go by.
What's there now?
I don't know. On the side of the building, though, we spent 2 years painting. I painted it. I made them pay for it. They'd put up painted on the wall, the brick wall, the whole wall. They painted the ad for their company. Kodak had one, Bell & Howell, DuPont, Dijon Ramsco, all kinds. You look there, it's already there now, over 50 years, but it's still there. People used to come from all over taking pictures of that wall, and it's been in more magazines than I can shake a stick at. It was the biggest, when they put it up, it was the biggest wall-painted thing of that type in the country.
That was your idea? Your idea?
Yeah.
What gave you the idea?
Well, I wanted to promote a brick wall that had nothing. It was plain bricks. Next to it was a parking lot. What are you going to do with it? And you could see it from the telephone company just across the way. So I said, what are the signs up there? Well, I'm not going to pay for it. The artist took 2 years to do it. In the middle of winter, he'd spend 2 hours all huddled up painting. It's magnificent.
It's still there.
Yeah. Do I have a picture? I think I have a picture here. I show it to her. Anyhow, so then Elliot went in the Army. He passed the bar too. Went in the Army.
Who?
Elliot? That's your son.
My son, yeah.
What are your children's names? Now's a good time. Give us their children's names.
Elliot, and I had a daughter, Ronnie, Ronnie. Ronnie Susan. She got killed in an automobile accident back in 1984 in California. Magnificent singer. She must have had my father's voice. I mean, she could make him laugh or cry.
Put this on.
And she sang at every affair around here. She sang in a nightclub. She sang in weddings. She sang for. She was Nellie Forbush at South Pacific in high school when they graduated. And people told me she was better than they were in New York. She had a wonderful voice.
Taught Hebrew school. And then I'd like to jump to your siblings and what became of their grandchildren in the family. How many are still Jewish identified? We're interested, okay? So give it a thought.
I guess they're all Jewish identified.
We're talking now about your siblings'
All right.
grandchildren.
I'll talk about the grandchildren. Let's take my family. Elnett wouldn't marry a Christian girl. He left the army and they wanted him to stay and be a major. They loved him. But he said, no, I can't get married out here in Fort Ord because there are no Jewish girls around. In fact, during one of his stays, it was a holiday and he wanted to go into the synagogue in a little town nearby. And when he told the rabbi he'd like to meet some Jewish people, the rabbi turned him down because he was afraid that if he met a girl and they fell in love, she'd leave the community. Or if she didn't leave the community, he might go off to war and get killed and she'd be left a widow. And he didn't see any real benefit to push him. So he kind of discouraged him from meeting a Jewish girl out west. So Elliot never really dated anybody for the 2 years he was in the army. And for a guy in his late 20s, that wasn't any fun. So when he got to 2 years up, he got out of the army, came home, and that's I told you about the business with the computer.
Right.
And he had a lot of friends from the University of Pennsylvania, and they used to vacation out on Long Island. So in the summertime weekends, he'd take a few days off and go out there and visit with them and so on. Well, about the second year or so, I said, I got to get him a car. So I said, what do you want? He said, I'd like to get a Porsche. I said, okay. So I went out and bought him a red Porsche. And that was when he'd go back and forth. Well, he's driving in Long Island, and this girl happened to notice a red Porsche. And sometime later he met her again a couple of times, and then he started chumming, and then he found out who she was and so on. First thing you know, it turned out to be the girl to be his wife. The car caught his eye. To this day he has a red Porsche, and he won't sell it for anything, because that's, even if he has to garage it forever. So, and she was from an Orthodox family. And I remember him coming home one day and saying, Ma, Pa, I think I met a nice girl and I'd like to bring her up to talk to you. I said, fine. Used to bring a girl home once in a while, but everything. Well, they brought her home, we started talking, found out about her family, wonderful people. They were in the, her father and a sister were in a business where they sold thread, buttons, things for the collar, the stuff for the shoulder, all that. And they sold to everybody that we knew, because Springfield at that time had a lot of companies that made clothing. I'll remember some of those names pretty soon. Anyhow, well, she was a nice girl. He continued going, and they finally got married. And I remember when I was going to New York to meet his family, her mother died when she was 18, so frankly, my wife was like her mother. And they never had nobody ever had an argument to scrap it. In fact, in my house, they used to come every Saturday. We'd go to shul, come home, have lunch, and then the sisters would start coming in. One sister had no children. The other one had 2. One of them had 4. And the 5th one
sisters?
lived in New Jersey.
This is the woman that your son married, sisters. Her sisters. Is that who you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about my wife's family.
Oh, your wife's family.
No. My mother's family with her 4 sisters.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
But 3 of them lived here with her, and the other one lived in New Jersey. She was married to an attorney. So they'd come in the afternoon with the kids. My mother would tea, coffee, cookies, whatever. She always had something. She was a baker. She always made something. And they'd sit all afternoon and talk and schmooze. And in all the years that we knew them, all my life, they never had an argument. They wouldn't say, "Oh, I don't like that dress." God forbid. "Oh, that dress is nice, but you know, if you didn't know everything was with tact." And about supper time, the men would come in because they had stores. One had a tire store, one was a druggist, one was a tailor. So they'd come in, and she'd feed them.
So this is Saturday.
A Saturday night, and they'd stick around. They'd play pinochle till 10 o'clock, and they'd take the kids, throw them over their shoulders, and go home. This happened almost every Saturday. So when you say, well, my grandfather was living with us at the time, and he had all his rabbis as friends. Why? Because he was a Hebrew teacher who never stopped studying. He knew Gemara, Tanakh, Mishnayos, you name it, he knew all of them. And the rabbis on Saturday used to walk from downtown all the way uptown, sit in his study, and they would, I was only about 10. I'd sit there listening to them and say, I wish I understood it. They would talk in Hebrew, they knew every little thing. They'll posik, there's this and there's that. They'd argue over a comma or a letter. It was, I wish I was old enough to have appreciated it. And she'd feed them too. They loved to come.
I'm confused.
What?
Your grandfather, we're talking about an earlier time than your son.
He's jumped back.
I
jumped back.
I jumped back. You know, something hits you somewhere.
Okay.
So,
You were
in fact, when Charlotte had her 2 children, she used to bring them over on Saturday too. They'd all be sitting there talking, schmoozing, having a great time, and it was like a family gathering every Saturday.
Wonderful.
And your grandfather,
So,
yeah,
so they'd come and sit in his study and study. We had some wonderful books. I bet he had some books that were at least 100 years old when he lived with us. With those leather bounds, remember?
Mm-hmm.
This big. And I think when he passed away, we gave him to the synagogue, and they're in a enclosed glass case. But something's happening to them, and I told them recently if they want to know about air conditioning them to keep them forever, let me know. Maybe I'll put a cabinet so they'll have it there. But that's what used to be in the old days. And that Eisenstein, who just passed away, her father was a rabbi, red beard man. He'd be there all the time. They would have discussions, friendly arguments, and so on. And the Pava guy was studying with my grandfather. He was a married man with children, but he'd always come over and study with my grandfather.
Which Pava is that?
That was, he was in the candy business. What the heck was his name?
He's the father of which ones?
who's he the father of, this Pava?
How are they related?
What was his name? He'll come to me. You know, I'll be talking, I'll just mention his name.
Right.
Who else used to be there? Used to be about 5, 6 people. They used to have a wonderful time. Those were the old days when orthodoxy was orthodoxy.
But your grandfather taught you.
Yeah, he taught it a lot of them. When he was downtown, before he moved with us, he was down there maybe 15 years or so.
This is like 1906 to 1921?
No, 1906. It was sometimes into the 30s. But he lived with us about 10 years, 12 years.
And
he died in 39. He must have come in the late 20s. Yeah. So he taught all these other people, I'd say every old Jewish family he taught that came to Springfield.
he would go to their homes.
Go to home.
Teach only the boys?
Only the boys.
Only the boys, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where he was brought up. And most of those boys were always Orthodox, were always very strong for the Jewish faith. They really were. You take like that Grotsky, her father was her her husband's father was in the plumbing business. I told you they built Westover. And they're all over the New England. And this is now the grandson that's running it, Ronnie.
So the question was, when you start with, what's his name, Isaac? Your Hurwitz?
Yeah.
Who's a Hebrew teacher, and you've got the father who's a Chazan,
Your father.
and then you, and then Elliot, and then his boys.
Yeah.
What level of Yiddishkeit and knowledge of Hebrew does Elliot have, and do the grandsons, your grandsons have?
Let's see. Elliot was born in 42. And he was taught Hebrew by the son of the Greek Hebrew teacher that taught me first. I had 3 Hebrew teachers. I had escapes me.
Friedman?
All right, okay.
Who's the second one? Or the third?
The names, I hate
All
names.
right.
How about Rabbi Friedman?
No. Biarsky.
Oh, we said
Biarsky.
Biarsky before.
He was taught by Biarsky, who taught me at first, and the son took over, never got married. And he taught him wonderful. Now, after Biarsky, I got a cousin came over from Europe by the name of Lutz. His son, he had 2 sons. One died. The present son is Arthur Lutz, and he taught me for a while till my grandfather moved up, and then he took over. And Lutz opened up a grocery store on Maple Street, just before you get to State Street, and got into real estate. He was a smart, nice man, and his sons took off after him and did pretty well in other things. I don't know what they did, but yeah, Lutz, nice man. All right.
So Elliot,
Elliot's well educated.
Now we get to Elliot. So when Elliot was bar mitzvah, I made a speech in my bar mitzvah. In those days, the kids made speeches after they. And we had at that time Rabbi Lamb. You remember Rabbi Lamb, who left us and went to New York for the university. And I said, Rabbi, Elliot, I'd like to have Elliot make a speech too. I made mine in Yiddish, but at these times he'll make it in English. Oh no, I make the Rabbi, do me a favor. I want him to make a speech. He needs to be able to express himself. So he did. And he was the only kid that Rabbi Lamb ever let make a speech after the bar mitzvah. And it's good for him, because they needed that to give him self-assurance. See? In my day, I was in shows. I was in operettas. Gilbert and sung out operettas at high school.
How did his affiliation with Jewish observance continue?
So Elliot was Orthodox.
Yeah.
Until he got married. And when he married Anne, her family was all Orthodox. But when she went to synagogue with her for Yontif, she sees around her everybody's old. She's like a baby or a young girl compared to a bunch of older women.
This is at
By
Kadima?
this time she met a few of his friends who had wives that were in Bethel, and they said, you don't be these old people, come to Bethel. So she went there with them a couple of times, found she liked it because she knew the girls already, and they were inviting her to a tea and to a party, enjoying this, enjoying that. So she felt more in life. She was a teacher, by the way. So that's how they started. So that's where he drifted away from orthodoxy to that. Well, after you've been in that thing for quite a few years, you don't even think about orthodoxy. You know what you have to do, but you don't do it. And what they did at the Bethel, sure, the Chazan faced the audience. The women went and sat with the men. The women could take a
Hallelujah.
bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. There's a lot of things, so you drift away. Now you have two boys. They both were bar mitzvah. But they were bar mitzvah there. And that David Aminia was their teacher. So, you see, they're already a little away from it. Who knows if they'll marry Jewish girls or not? We don't know. They're, after going to school and you're meeting Goyim and this one and that one, you say, oh, they're not any worse or different than we are. And besides, in this day and age, the Roman Catholics, the Protestants, they're all losing congregations. It's a trend. The kids, well, look what happened to the Catholics. We don't have to talk about that. They've taken dozens of people, hundreds, thousands, who don't go to church anymore. My girl that works for me, she's a Catholic. She won't go to church anymore. She quit going, which means her kids don't go. They're going to be anti-religious. They're going to. So the whole trend is with this modernization and with the internet and this and that, less and less people. They're closing churches everywhere. Look at the Alliance. They're closing up 3 shuls and going to build one for all 3 congregations.
Let's stay with that for now. Tell us about your connection with Kadima and the building of Kadima in 1963. Can you give us some sense of how you were connected and your involvement
Well,
with Kadima?
let me tell you a story. At that time, we had Rabbi Weisvogel. He was a new rabbi. We had a lot of rabbis there. When that was built, I remember the place became so crowded that on holidays, there was no place to sit. The women were upstairs, and downstairs the men were crowded. It was jammed. And we had more members than we could handle. We even used the downstairs. It used to be the shul before we built the upper part for holiday services. And downstairs, we let the men and women sit together. Because, to the best of my memory, because the rabbi we had then, oh God.
You're talking about where Kesser is now? Which building are we
I'm talking about the
Kesser.
Kesser. Yeah, but what was now the Kesser building. What became the Kesser
Yeah.
building?
So they said they wanted to get a bigger show, and I was on the board of directors. In fact, I was vice president, I think. And I said, if we're going to do any moving, let's move to Long Meadow, because I already lived in Long Meadow. That was about maybe in the early '60s, I think, something like that. And I said, more and more Jews are moving from Forest Park to Long Meadow. And people from downtown are moving to Forest Park. It's like a gradual scale, so, because most of the wealthier Jews or the modern Jews and Weisvogel didn't want to say anything because they bought him a house in the historic section, so he was against it. And there was a guy by the name of Friedman, Elke Friedman, who was a gabbai, chief gabbai, tough man. And he owned that house where it is now, where the shul is now. And he wanted to get rid of it. So he offered that space for the money they wanted to buy, which was like $85,000. That and his son-in-law lived next to him. And I went on a thing to change that. So I got a big map of western Forest Park, and I put a pin in every place where the Jewish house was in the Forest Park area. And I pointed out It was big 5x6 of them. I pinned it on a wall. I showed them all the pins. All the Jews live here. We should go to Long Meadow, right across. You know where Georgetown is?
Yeah.
It's right across from
Sinai.
from the JCC.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy there that wanted to own that property. He wanted to give me that 12 acres for the same 85,000. See, so I said for 85 we can get this 12 acres. People can move there. We'll build houses, you know, and this way you'll have all the people from Forest Park. It's a short walk. It's a quarter of a mile. Half a mile. They'd be in Shul. This other way, if you move it down to Sumner Avenue, they gotta go from Dickinson Street and Groveland Street, all this up there, over a mile and a half.
You're suggesting there are more Jews in Longmeadow Orthodox than there were in Forest Park.
And also Jews in Forest Park that were Forest Park is Springfield,
Yeah.
and that is closer to where the JCC is than going all the way down to Sumner Avenue. So it's a shorter distance. You got the Jews there.
Oh, I
Build
see.
it in that section.
It would have been closer to walk to this shul you were proposing as compared to the
And
one
I
over
said
here.
at the same time, as the Jews get better and better, more are going to move to Long Meadow. So why are we doing it the wrong way? Well, Elke Friedman had a business, plumbing business. They sold supplies, and he fought it. The chief rabbi gets away with murder. Make a long short, they decided to take his setup.
And what about Louis Eisenstein? What did he have to say?
Eisenstein at that time he might have been president at that
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So, and he was Orthodox. And he only lived a short distance from where they were going to build the shul. It's around the corner.
We heard that. Mhm.
So the few Jews that lived there,
Wanted it there.
now the area was changing, but it wasn't changing that fast. It was very little bit. Some people went into that area like Eisenstein and so on. There's Bruceland lived up the street. There were a couple of them.
How about Nathan Goldstein?
Nathan Goldstein, where did he live? He might have, I don't know where he lived.
Okay.
I really don't, but he might have lived near there. So the money men had that. I didn't have the money in those days.
The money
We were
man said,
coming,
this
but
is
we
where
didn't.
we're going to build it.
So they built the building there. And once spoken before he died, we happened to be talking. And he said, you know, Paul, we should have listened to you 35 years ago. We should have moved to Long Meadow, because now we're going to have to move to Long Meadow. And he says we could have done it then, and we'd have been a better place. Besides, with 12 acres, the land we would have sold, we could have given to our people so that they could move and build houses there. Instead of Georgetown, we'd have had a Jewish colony there. Well, too late now. So now they have the alliance. They would never have built the Beth Israel down where they did if we'd had a shul in there. The Kesser would have come and joined us. We could have made that shul bigger and bigger and bigger. Why not? The late Jacob, when it came up, was Orthodox.
Mhm.
And it turned conservative because of the pressure of the times. Yeah. And being across from the Bethel was kind of a...
Wasn't it Rabbi Friedman? What was the rabbi of B'nai Jacob? He then became a rabbi at Beth Israel.
I forget.
I'm going to ask you some names. Just give me some reflections about these people, okay? Either what they did for business or any memories of the family, just some names. Maurice Elliott? Maurice Elliott?
Maurice Elliott was married a Katz girl, and I forget what the heck Maurice did. Yeah,
Okay, Milton Katz.
Milton Katz was involved with his with the Country Club Soda Company. Yeah.
An old Springfield family.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. Alex Hirschhorn.
Alex Hersher, I know him well. Was he in the box business? Let me see his name. I forget. By the way, this Milton Katz. I don't know if Sarah Katz, I introduced you downstairs. That might have been his. That might have been his wife. We'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, and Elian was his brother, was his cousin. They're the Katz girl. And this was Nate Goldstein was in the movie business.
Movie?
Yeah, he built the arcade theater on State Street, and
In Northampton too?
I think he did.
Yeah.
And I think
And
he
in
built.
Greenfield, Ken.
And I think he built one up on
I think it's
Summer
the same
Avenue.
family we know about?
On Summer Avenue. Nate, yeah, he had theaters,
Uh-huh.
and he also had another real estate, and was very late paying his bills. If you bought tires, if you got your money in 90 days, you were unlucky. He waited till you pled, because he was rich, he and his brother. But come on, Nate, I need the money, you know. All right, I'll send you a check. You know. Oh, God. And, oh, yeah. And here is, who was this? Abe Saffer. Abe Saffer. They had a smelting business in West Springfield. And they couldn't sell their property because of, now you have to clean it up.
Toxic.
It would cost them more money to clean it up. The son was a dentist, Ralph, and Ralph recently died. He was here too, and I think they went bankrupt, so he could get rid of the property. It now belongs, I think, to West Springfield, and they're trying to get rid of it. Who's this guy? Belsky. Belsky was Sam Belsky. I think had a company that made clothing, manufactured clothing on, I think it was on Dwight Street.
How about Jack Robinson?
Jack Robinson, I don't recall him being so active in our show, but he was sold insurance.
Was he an old-time Springfield family?
No, I think he originally came from Worcester. Yeah. Good friend of mine.
Okay. I want to.
Oh yeah, here's Irving Cohen. That was Sam's brother, not William brother. Yeah, Irving Cohen. He died some years ago.
So I want to ask you.
Katz.
Let's go.
Ben Katz had a food business that was Springfield something, a food business, a wholesale, and he what was it? It wasn't a Springfield, it was something, you know, canned goods and all that kind of stuff. He had a big plant on Chestnut Street. Yeah. Sam Black worked for the telephone company. He was a manager there somewhere.
And how about the Koppelmans? The Koppelmans?
Kopelman's. Kopelman, a kid went with me to school, but I forget what he did. He after he graduated, he went to New York, and I don't know what happened to him.
And how about Kenneth Abrams?
Kenny Abrams is still working. You know, he's on this Alliance thing.
Uh-huh. Do you remember him from the days at...
I don't remember him from those days,
Uh-huh.
but he was the head of a food company. I don't know if it was A&P.
Food Marks.
Food Mart.
Marts. Yeah, yeah. I think that one time that was at A&P, but he had a big job there.
Okay, we're going to go now. I'd like to ask you about your wife's family. Can you give us her maiden name and about her parents, where they came from, where they lived?
Well, let's see. My mother-in-law came over here around 1920.
Names.
I think it was after.
And what was her name?
Yeah. Ida
Ida.
Krasner,
Okay. She came from?
Russia somewhere. Her her s- her nephew is Bert Krasner, the photographer,
Oh, I like him. Nice man.
and Bert's father, Sam, was her brother.
Uh-huh.
And she had a sister who lived in Worcester. And a sister lived here. Remember Sam Silverman? He had college clothes. They used to rent out clothing. They have a place in West Springfield. The daughter runs it. Their daughter, his daughters run that town. And Sam married Eva Silverman, and she was a Krasner girl. That was a Ida's sister. The mother's name I don't remember. In fact, I've got pictures of them there on the wall, in my bedroom. The father and the mother.
The father and the mother of your wife.
Yeah.
And what's the father's name?
His name, oh my God.
Your father-in-law.
Oh, my father-in-law.
Yeah.
It was Milton.
Milton Krasner.
Now, actually, his name was not Lannon, but it was some other name. I'm trying to think of it.
She was a Krasner, formerly. His Charlotte's mother was a Krasner.
Yeah.
I have that right? We're talking now about the father.
And the father was Menachem Milton. What was his last name? Lannon. And the reason he took the word Lannon, when he came over from the old country, and I think it was right after the war, he was a shoemaker. And he had a brother who had come earlier by the name of David, who lived at Six Corners in Springfield. And when he got over here, somehow or other, they mixed it up and they called him David Lannon. So when he came here and he couldn't speak English, they want to know who he came to, and he says, to see my brother, David Lannon. They put his name down as Lannon. And actually, there's some big shot, I can't think of his name, it'll come to me someday, of that had the same name. I said, why didn't he use his other name? He said his brother was David, they put his name Lannon.
Well, what's his real last name?
I don't know. I'm trying to recall it, because I only heard it maybe once or twice in my whole life.
And he settled, your father-in-law settled in
So
Springfield. How come? Because of his brother?
So the father came and went to Holyoke. And a few years later, he came to Springfield and opened up on Winchester Square. And he bought this 3-family house with Vinnick. Vinnick had a cleaning store. You know Jimmy Vinnick? All right. Jimmy's a pretty rich guy now. He was in stocks and bonds and everything. And the father and my father-in-law became friendly. And in those days, they bought it together. 2 people would buy it. So they bought this house, and some time later, I guess, my father-in-law bought him out. And they had the 3-family house, and he got rent from 2 of them. When I think of those rents, it was a joke. When you saw $35, $40 a month rent, when now they're getting $700, $800 for the same piece of property. So that's what the story was. Then I met Charlotte. You heard that story. I didn't tell you that story. There used to be a club at the Kadima Synagogue. On Saturday nights, the teenagers would get together, and the rabbi we had was McGill.
What?
McGill.
McGill?
And he was nice with the...
M-A-G, yeah.
Yeah, after us, he went to Canada and became a rabbi there. Reuben McGill, I think it was. And, God, this is a long time ago. I was, 16.
How old are you now?
92.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember. And he used to get the kids together. They called it the KYPL, Kadima Young People's League, all teenagers. And they'd come, we'd talk about politics, school, jobs, colleges, dates, things that the kids talk about. And he'd listen to discussions on religion and philosophy and music and stuff like that. Well, in fact, I was, I'll digress, in high school I was a lawyer in Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, trial by jury, and I was the lawyer for the plaintiff. She was a girl who was engaged, and the guy broke off the engagement. So I sang the whole thing for them, changing my hats. That's the kind of stuff we did. Well, and after we get through the night, one of the girls, they come to my house, we'd have cookies and soda or a glass of milk, play around for an hour talking and go home. Well, one night, one of my friends said, what are you doing? I said, gee, I didn't go to shul tonight. He said, why don't we go over to Charlotte's house? Who's Charlotte? Well, she comes there. I said, I don't know her. He says, come on, we'll crash the party. They're all friends. So we went over to her house, and we got in, and they were kind of surprised to see us, but we joined the party with all the fellas and girls. Must have been 10, 15 kids there. And for an hour or so, we broke up to go home. As they were going out the door, I gave her a kiss. She's standing saying goodbye, and she slaps my face. The chutzpah, the nerve. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't know me. He crashes my party, and he got a nerve to give me a kiss on the way home. A friendly kiss. I go home, and nice girl. So a few nights later, weeks later, my same friend calls up. He says, I got to babysit for my niece. The father and mother have to go out, and I got to watch the kid, a little infant. He said, well, some of the kids will bring over half a dozen, we'll waste the evening. All right. So I go over. She's there.
Why is she there?
In the middle of it all, the baby starts to cry. Nobody knows what to do. She goes in, takes care of the baby. We changed the diaper, gave it something to eat. I don't know what it did. Baby couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Took care of it. Why? She had a daughter, a sister, who was 9 years younger. She was in 14. Mm-hmm. So she had a little baby sister, and she knew what had to be done. I went home that night, and I said, Ma, I think I met the girl I'm going to marry. She's year 17. What are you talking about? I said, she's a wonderful girl. I told her about the baby. She said, all right. And forgot about it. But I didn't. So I called her up some time later, took her to a show at X-Theater. Those days it was 50 cents. And it blossomed into a love affair. Hmm. So I knew her from 1933 until she passed away.
How many years before you got married?
Almost five. 33, 37, 4 years. 4.5 years, almost 5 years. Yeah. Yeah. There's another situation.
That's a nice story.
We never had a fight. Oh, we talked, discussed things, argued. We did what my mother always said. You can go to sleep mad, but you can go to bed mad, but don't go to sleep mad. So you always talk it out.
We heard that today, too.
It's good. Yeah.
Did her family, where did they live in Springfield?
They lived on Belmont Avenue, a 3-family house. Yeah. Right near, I think it's near Edgeland Street.
When you recall the North End and people coming into the stores when you were a kid, can you recall them speaking Yiddish to the owners of the businesses, or was it English? Was it Russian? What languages do you recall?
I used a lot of Yiddish.
You did.
Yeah, because the new ones that came in, you know, in the 20s or so, and I already was working when I was like 10 years old. I started working for my uncle, washing the drives and all the searings and all the stuff from his business. And I think I got a quarter a day. And I did that till about 14. And then I went to work for Growers Outlet. Couldn't think of the name. Growers Outlet. They were a Jewish grocery store on Main Street, up almost where the newspaper has its building now.
How do you spell the name? Grow?
Growers Outlet.
Like to
Grower,
grow.
to grow.
To grow. Yeah.
And I remember I was unpacking the fruit and vegetables and putting them in places in front of the store. And one day I walked in, and where the door was, there was a big cookie counter. A woman used to run it all the time. And she's not there. So I said to the boys, what happened to her? I was then like 14. They said, she's sick or something. She can't come in today. So I said, who's going to sell the cookies? We don't know. Me, I put on an apron, I get her on the counter. I'm no longer a vegetable man. And I start selling cookies. Well, the only way to sell cookies is to expand it. 3 pounds for $1. 3 pounds of cookies for $1. The most delicious cookies in the world. I did more business. 11 o'clock, the boss who came from shul walks in. Walks by. Hi. Walks back. Who are you? I says, well, I've been here now 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. And I used to he said, well, what are you doing here? Well, the girl is sick, and I took over. You took over? Well, somebody's got to sell cookies. How you doing? I said, take a look. He looks in the register. Wow. I took in more money in the 2 hours that I was there than he took in the place all day. Keep it up. So I did it for about 3 weeks.
What happened to her? She lost her job?
I don't know what she did. I never saw her again. About the 3rd week, I heard where somebody might need a salesman in Lincoln department store. It's a big store with like a department. So I walk in and I see Lincoln, the name of Lenetsky, and the other guy was calling. And I said, sir, I'd like a job here. Looks at me. What are you going to do? I said, I'll sell. No, he said, I don't need any salesmen. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll work for you for nothing. Just give me 2% of what I sell. How can he lose? If I don't sell anything, he doesn't pay anything. But I'm not going to do it for nothing. You came in for a tie, you bought a shirt. If you came in for a pair of pants, you bought a sweater. They walked, something, you bought a suit. They sold suits, you know. I was doing so much business.
How old were you?
That 3 weeks later, he said, I got to let you go. What's the matter? You're doing fine, I love you, but you're making too much money. The other salesmen are going to quit if you don't get out of here.
That's what happened to my father.
So I lost my job.
He let you go rather than.
Well, he'd have to let like 6 salesmen go.
Or he'd give you
this
a
guy's
salary.
making $20, $50. I'm making $35. They're mad. They want to go on my
Why didn't they
system.
just put you on salary then?
I didn't want the
You
salary.
want the commission. Right.
And he didn't want to keep me anymore because, what was I? I was 14, 15 years old at the time.
Now, you got these
In
memories.
those days, you didn't need a license or anything.
I asked you about people speaking Yiddish in the stores.
All right.
That's
So
what
when
came
some
to
of these kids or people came in with the parents could only speak Yiddish. And they'd be talking to their parents, and I'd bust right in and tell them Yiddish. Du darfst kaufen. Ich kenne es nicht. Ein Postschir. $12. $3. You know, I could talk to them. I heard it in the house all the time. So, it's a long time.
Tell us about the Yiddish club you told, Yiddish night. Tell us about that.
That'd be KYPO?
No.
Academa, I
The
think.
one that Academa where you would translate Cinderella into Yiddish?
Oh,
And you'd have all the comedians in town
yeah,
come to help
well,
you.
we had a lot of Jewish comedians, real good kid. I mean, Sophie Plotkin, she was a Glitzianer. And if you heard a Glitzianer tell a joke, it's funny to just listen. Because you don't even know what you're saying sometimes. But it's so funny with their accent. And she was a sweetheart. And then we had Buzz Ziff. He would, like a semi-professional, go on. And we had Maury Kelberman, his wife. Was married to B. Kelberman. And that was let's see, there were three, four sisters, and one of them is here. Anyhow, we decided we'd have a Yiddish night and put it in the lower part of the show. We had a stage there where it was, like a dais, and we'd put on skits. And how are we going to do it? You got to have Yiddish jokes, but it's going to be a Yiddish, because at that time, everybody could speak Yiddish.
Are we talking 1930s, 1940s? What
Oh,
approximately?
I'd say the 30s.
Okay.
And in fact, I've got a whole thing of history, a box back there that I'm going to look up, because it's loaded with stuff. I think the picture of my building is there. Anyhow, so they used to come over to my house. By this time, I had moved out of the house because Charlotte became pregnant. So we moved into Somerset Street and rented a house up there. And they'd come over at supper time. We'd have a bite to eat, and then we'd take Cinderella, and we'd translate it to Yiddish. Well, you can go crazy, it's funny. We would take all kinds of things. And the last one we did, I remember that real well because I brought them all in, and we were going to make our own stuff. Like, for instance, some guy decided, it's Florida or bust. What's Florida bust? Two guys decide they're going to go to Florida in their car and leave the wives home. And they'll have Florida, and then they'll come home. So they're talking in Yiddish, they're going to go to Florida, and they get down there, and it's on the way back, and there's jokes all the time, I can't remember them all, but one I'll always remember.
You can tell us in Yiddish.
In Yiddish, the guy calls his wife, says, Rivke, il darf haben 50 $. Für was? Mein Car geht nicht, il darf das haben fixen. Darf haben für Oil und Quick, il darf 50 $. Ihr könnt ihr nicht hören. Du kennst mich nicht hören? Was sagst du? Ihr darf haben 50 $. Ihr könnt ihr nicht hören. Operator buzzed. I can hear him. He wants $50. Du hörst mich hören. Du schick him the 50 $. Well,
Let's do that one in English now, okay?
What?
Do it again in English now.
Rebecca, I need $50. Why? I'm out of gas. I need a car. I need to fix it. I need $50. Send me $50. I don't hear you. What do you mean? I need $50. Can't you hear me? Was sagst du? What are you saying? I need $50. I can't hear you. Operator. I can hear him. He wants $50. Do you hear him? You send him $50. You don't understand Yiddish?
I grew up with German, so I understand some of it. We didn't grow up with Yiddish.
And my
about
father
Ger-
didn't.
It's all about German.
My father didn't speak Yiddish until I heard him at my own wedding, so I didn't know he knew that.
Talk about Yiddish. It's like German.
Yeah.
After the war, and I was a camera business, one of my companies, I'd done so much business with them, I think it was Leica
Probably.
took 100 of us dealers from all over the country and sent us to a photographic exhibit in Germany.
After the war.
After the war. It was about 1960.
Oh, okay.
By the way, when I got there was still plenty of buildings down. And one day I had it free, so I walked into the museum they had there in Munich. And it was a new building because they smashed the old one. And this woman is there copying a painting. She's got an easel and she's copying an old original.
Right.
And I'm looking at it, I said, das ist sehr gut. And she says, danke. And we start talking about the painting and this and that and everything else. And finally I'm getting ready to say something. And she says, du redest da guten Deutsch. I go and tell her it's Yiddish. Yiddish is German.
Yeah.
It's German, it's Polish, it's Russian.
True.
Everything's stuck together. Yeah. There was a Bilski's department store on opposite Ferry Street. In other words, it was on Dwight Street, facing. When you came to the end of Ferry Street onto Dwight Street, there was Bilski's, and that was one of the stores. And then there was Tannenberg, and there was Rappaport. They had a kind of I forget what it is, and somebody there had a store where they sold hay and wheat and all that stuff for the horses. In those days we didn't have automobiles.
The horses, you had carriage shop? Where would the horses go?
Well, they'd buy it and take it. The horses would come in, load up the wagons with stuff, and take it back to a farm.
Oh, okay.
My father had a horse and a wagon early, and till the cars came out. Then he bought the first Ford, I guess, that they made, or Dodge, or whatever they had in those days.
Where did your father keep his horse and carriage?
I don't know where he kept it.
You can recall your father with
But by the time I was born, he was already running a car.
Okay.
And the first thing he did when he got that car, because they didn't have any license, no licenses then, nobody taught you anything. So you get in, you learn how to drive. So he drives down the street just where the arch is, Lyman, turns a corner, forgets how to stop it, and goes into the store window.
Oh.
Cost him a pretty penny to get out of that mess. Who had insurance in those days? You know, you didn't have automobile insurance. It was the beginning of the auto industry. I think it was a Duryea. He had a Duryea that in those days, it didn't have power steering. You had to have strength to move the wheels. Now, where were you at? You said something.
Okay, so we said the Glickman family. The Glickman family, yeah.
I don't know whether he had a wine store or maybe he had that hay business. I really don't know.
Okay.
But he had 3 children. Alfred
A doctor.
became a doctor, and he was in the Army, in the Navy, and did an excellent job. The other one was
Anna.
Anna. She was a lawyer. And the third one, isn't that funny? I got a mental block there. I can't think of her name.
Okay. And now you mentioned the Feinbergs with the Gabby. Goodmans. Neurick, can you tell us about the Goodmans a little bit?
Well,
The junk
Neurick's
business, what was that
father,
about? Yeah.
grandfather, started a scrap metal business. He probably went in a wagon at first and built it up and sold it to somebody, or paper scraps from the paper mills and sold them to people to recycle them. His son Harry, was very good in his synagogue business. He was a director also, and took over the business from the grandfather. And when he went on his way, Neurick came along and took over from that. And recently, it must be a few years now, the 2 sons that Neurick had sold that business and retired.
And this was it still junk business? What was it at that
It
point?
was still junk,
Still
but they
junk.
had connections everywhere. Certain factories, your stuff is yours, and you can have this, and it was a steady thing. Made a lot of money. They sold it for a lot of money, and they all retired. And
what are the children doing?
today, frankly, I wonder how that business is going, because with all the factories gone, a lot of that income has disappeared.
And what do the children of these people do now? Are they all professionals?
Or
Wait a
grandchildren,
second.
Neurick's grandchildren.
I don't know what Nurk's kids are doing.
I had a question about the relationships between the Jews of Springfield and the ones in Northampton, Greenfield, Pittsfield, Athol. Did you know each other?
Very rarely. I took a girl out for my prom from Ware, Mass. Her father had a business out there, some kind of a public market. I met her somewhere, I don't know, and invited her to the prom when I graduated high school. Other than that, I don't remember them at all. There was there was a group who had a lady shop in, August.
Yeah.
All right. They were very close. In fact, Sam August sold me my first life insurance policy, and that was when we had our store on Belmont Avenue. He said, if something happens to you, how's your family going to exist because you're doing most of it? So he took out a policy for me. And so I knew the Augusts.
Elliot Allen, whose funeral was today, was in August.
Yeah,
His
yeah,
mother.
yeah,
His mother was in August.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I knew them, you know, I knew them when I used to go to Amherst to see my brother-in-law and my sister. They had a house there and he worked for a drugstore. That's how I got into the camera business. And so we'd go there every month, so a nice day we'd drive out there.
How'd they happen to move to Amherst, of all places?
What?
How'd they happen to move to Amherst?
Only because he got a job there.
In the pharmacy. Was it... can
What
you-
year are we talking about?
It had to be about 1938, 37, 36, 37, 38.
I don't think there were any Jews
You
then.
think there were Jews in Amherst then?
A few, very few.
Teaching at this college, maybe?
Well, there were some college kids that were Jewish, of course.
Yeah.
You were near Smith College, Amherst College, and UMass.
Right.
There were Jews there. At that time, they called it the agricultural school.
Oh.
Do you recall your sister ever telling you about what it was like being Jewish in Amherst?
No, she never seemed to. I'll tell you, she was the kind that everybody liked her, got friendly with her. And she used to take in sometimes and feed students their Jewish food. She'd have meals for the Jewish boys.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I know of two of the guys that, oh, if I can remember their names now, I can picture them in my mind, but I just can't remember their names. That used to come for Yontif and everything. She'd make dinner for them Saturdays, because at those times they didn't have Hillel. So I think she was probably maybe the most Jewish-centered person in time, because she was religious.
And her name was?
Irene
Last name?
Goodless. Goodless.
Goodless.
Goodlass. You know the Goodless Electric Company?
Oh, yes.
They were
I did.
cousins. Yeah.
The electric outlet. Is that what they call the company, electric outlet?
No. The Goodless Electric were ones that would put electricity into your house.
Oh, who's the Jewish family that owns in West Springfield I think it's called electric outlet?
I know what you mean.
They produced,
He died recently. The father.
who would that be? That's
Is it-
where we bought that lamp
The
from
lamps and all the other stuff.
Right.
Sure.
What synagogue?
I just can't think of his
Right,
name.
okay.
He's right across from classic furniture.
You were there, yeah. Which
Yeah.
reminds me, we didn't mention the Osgoods in terms of the clothing and fabric.
Oh.
Osgoods.
They were on Osgood Street.
Can you remember them in their stores?
God, if my wife were right, she'd remember all these names. She remembered everybody's name. I can't.
Was Osgood's always owned by the Kahn family?
No, it was the Kahn family.
So the older Kahn, who's not around anymore, what was his first name?
That may be the next generation. Or maybe they bought it out, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the Osgood family with fabrics and all that stuff was on Osgood Street, right next door to where my uncle had his automobile parts business.
And the Khan family is probably not the first family, is what you're saying.
Oh, Khan, K-H-N, they'd be Jewish.
Yeah, I know they're Jewish.
But they
but
probably
are they
didn't
the
have-
founders of that store?
I don't think so.
No.
Somewhere, remember, I think somebody died some years ago, 5, 10 years, and somebody bought them out and moved it to West Springfield.
It's the
No,
same
it's his
family-
son.
same fa-
The son is
son.
running it now. The
son
son and
did.
the grandson.
Oh, maybe that could be, or it could be by marriage.
No, it's Khan. Still Khan.
Yeah, but
K-A-H-A-N.
but maybe,
Bobby.
yeah, but this may not be his son. It might be
It is his son.
his son-in-law,
No, it's his
All
son.
right.
his son,
Let me ask you about the Grodzkis. Can you tell me about them?
the Grodzkis.
Yeah.
All right, the Grodzki, you met her downstairs.
Right.
Her husband's, oh yeah, she was, by the way, she was B. Kelberman's sister, and Irma Kelberman, and they had a clothing store on Main Street. I'll find out. They had a big store, wonderful clothing. Everybody went to them. And Leonard's, it was a wonderful store. There was another store. That was when you wanted fancy stuff, you went to Leonard's or to these people. And what was their name? All right.
And did you say Grodzki was in the plumbing business?
All right. All right. Her husband's father started this plumbing business, probably going house to house speaking plumbing. Then he advanced and got to the point where where her husband's father, oh no, it was her husband, that when Westover Field was built, that I think it's either here, because it's 3 or 4 generations. It's still in existence. They have branches all around, and one near Boston, one out way down in Connecticut, and her grandsons are now running the business. One of them is named Ronnie, R-O-N-N-I. Funny thing, just like Charlotte's. His name is Ronald. My daughter's name was Ronnie. Yeah, but they call him Ronnie.
Anything about the Fines? You gave us the Fine family?
All right. The Fines were related with the Pavas. Somewhere down the line of Penn, Mayor. And when we lived on Somerset Street, there were Dr. Louis Fine, good doctor, took care of me when dog bit me, and stayed all night with me to make sure I didn't develop rabies. That's the kind of doctors we had. Today, would they do it? No. But he was a good friend of ours, and he was my family doctor. And then there was there was Sam Fine, the lawyer, his brother. And there was another Fine. I haven't used the name in 50 years. But they're,
Okay. How about the Brucelands? Is that a local family? The shoe business?
They're related somewhere.
And they were living here too?
Yeah,
It's-
the Brucelans were always in the shoe business, except one, Sam Bruceland, was the insurance business.
And did you say your wife's family was in the shoe business too? Did I get that? Was your wife's family in the shoe business?
My wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, my father-in-law.
What did he do in the shoe business?
He repaired them. He had a repair shop
Where?
on Wilbraham Road at the you know where that Winchester Square is.
Mm-hmm.
He had it right there on the right-hand side.
He made a livelihood repairing shoes.
Yeah, for years.
You know what he called his store? You have any record?
I forget.
Okay.
All I know is when he had his heart attack there, I was practicing law. They called me up that he had a heart attack. He was laying on the floor. I says, call an ambulance, I'll be there as fast as I can get there. I rushed up just the time the ambulance came in. They kind of checked him out a little bit, put him in the ambulance. Unless my car was raining cats and dogs, the roads were slippery and icy. And I left my car there and got in the ambulance and went to the hospital. And Louis Eisenstein, the doctor, came and took care of him and kept him there for, I think it was 10 weeks. In those days, they didn't know what to do with him. They wouldn't let him move around. They wouldn't let him walk. They wouldn't just stay in bed and rest. That's all they did. But he was a strong man, and he pulled through. But after that, they didn't want him to do any more shoe repairing. So I had to auction off sell the place and auction off the machinery, and I closed out the whole thing, get him straightened out. And after that, his brother-in-law, Sam Silverman, who lived downstairs on the first floor for where they lived on Belmont Avenue, and he had 2 daughters. And Sam said, I need help in my rental business. Come and work with me. So that's the first time he ever got on Social Security. When you work for yourself, who thinks of Social Security? So he got on the Social Security, which helped him in later years. And he helped him with the rentals and all that. And then he got his final heart attack on the end of, it must have been Hanukkah. Yeah, I think it was, I got the date somewhere.
This reminds me, when you talk about Social Security, when you remember the Depression, right? You remember it well, I'm sure. Can you recall if the Jewish families or all the families helped each other? This one was poor, didn't have food. How did people survive in those days?
Yeah.
Was there a shul? Did the shul help people? How'd you do it?
My mother, when they lived downtown, was the first secretary for the Jewish home.
The Jewish home?
You know, at that time it was just a little old house on Massoit Street, and if people were too poor, they lived there. They had a room, and so on. And they used to go out, the women in the organization, Hadassah and all the others, and collect nickels, dimes, quarters, a dollar to support the food, and that's how they did it. Then we moved up into the park in 1919. It was too far away. She didn't drive a car, so she had to quit. Somebody else took over, and then they moved as they got more affluent, and people began to realize it was more important because there were more Jews, getting more older people. They went to oh gosh, it's what they call it, but some terrace. It's up. You know where the Mercy Hospital is?
Mm-hmm.
You know, up above. There's a place where a lot of doctors are now.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I'm trying to remember the name, something Terrace. And they had a house there, big house, and they took them in there, and I was a director there for a while. They used to take the old people and keep them while they're sick, take care of them when they couldn't, you know, like they do here. And if you didn't have the money, we managed to pull it through. We'd borrow it, we'd get to have an organization that would just knock doors and say we need $5, $2, until we could get enough money to support the place.
So during the Depression, who took care of poor people? I mean, during the Depression, did you have the shuls gathering food, or I mean, how did you take care of each other?
They mostly was really old people, mostly Orthodox, and they're people who really didn't have a big family.
Yeah.
Because they had a family, you took them in. When things were bad, my grandfather came with, you know, when my brother-in-law lost his job, they came and lived with us. You know, you took care of each other. Today, you got your kid gets out of college, he goes to California. How's he going to help you? Something else happens, you're far away. Your daughter gets married, she's not living next door anymore. She's in Texas. So times have changed. So that's why we built this place and spent all the money and make it bigger and bigger. I remember when they moved from, what was that terrace? It's a simple name, I can't think of it. Copley Terrace. They get you, Copley Terrace. That's when we sold that place to doctors. They built their institution there, and we built this place, and we've been expanding it, and now the money men came in like Grinspoon and David Katz, and he took over his father's business, that grocery business, moved to Windsor Knox, and eventually built it up and sold it.
You didn't have the money men back in the 50s and 60s, like what you referred to, the Grinspoons?
No.
You
But,
didn't have that kind of phenomenon.
no. But things were cheaper. You could buy milk for 10 cents. A dozen eggs was a dime. Rolls were a penny. So you see, it was a cheap environment, but you couldn't give it that. If you needed that kind of money then, you couldn't find it. If you had $50,000, you were a millionaire. Mm-hmm. I remember when I made my first $50,000. I was a rich man. Then it came to $100,000. Wowee! So you can imagine when you see it in the 7 figures or 8 figures, you start saying to yourself, this is it, and then all you read about is billionaires. $1,000 million. $1,000 million. Kids out of school thought if they had a job where they made $10,000 a year, they were rich. You could buy a house for $500, $5,000. I bought my first house on Somerset Street for $4,950.
What year was that?
41. No, I moved in 41. I bought it in 43.
And do you remember the year it was when you made your first 50,000?
What?
When you said when I made 50,000, it was like wow.
That must have been about the time of the war, because we were selling everything we could buy. I used to get on a train on a Sunday and go to New York, stay at maybe the Edison Hotel or some other hotel for a week. And I would start at Canal Street, and there was the Manhattan Novelty Company. There were other companies. You'd go in there, what you got? Well, we got hunting knives. Good, I'll take a half a dozen. What else you got? We got kits for the guys in the Army. Good, I'll take a dozen.
Would you carry them out, or would they
ship them?
ship them?
I remember carrying home 200 pounds of stuff to sell. Novelties, little things, small radios. That was a big thing too. Wallets. I can't remember all the stuff that they had. Dresser sets. And we had the store then. So, the bigger store. So we load up the center store with islands of stuff, and Christmas people come and buy it. What do you got? We stayed open till 11 o'clock at night sometimes, because people were working days and nights, and they'd come in 10 o'clock. Now, oh, thank God you're open. And they'd spend $100, $200. I remember a guy walking one day. He was so filthy, and he was so smelly. He must have come off a farm, and nobody wanted to wait on him. I walked out. What can I do for you? He left me over $1,000, and that was a lot of money in all little gifts. He had to bring his car over so we could pack it. Nobody could carry all this stuff.
This
So
was
you
for
see-
Christmas?
What?
It was for Christmas present?
Yeah, $1,000. We must have ended up making $400, $500. We sold records. Remember those big round records?
We still use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of things, and I can't remember them all unless you bring my.
I want to ask you a question that's like home stuff. Do you remember the first washing machine that you?
Yes.
When was that? Who had it?
I bought it for my mother in the late 30s. About,
Do you remember the company?
it was the Springfield Gas Light Company.
And was it electric or was
This
it
what
partly
happened.
electric?
This what happened. We had an ice box in those days where every day the guy came with a chunk of ice and put it in there. And it was in a hallway.
We're talking
And
1930?
every day you had to pull out the tray and pour the
In
water
the
on.
1930s.
Well, my mother was helping me that time sewing the covers. I hadn't passed the bar just yet. It was before then.
The umbrella covers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were living on Dickinson Street because I say we lost the house on, so we had moved into Dickinson. It was after my father died. And something went wrong. I think it was a stove. So we called the guy from the gas light company. Those times they used to sell a lot of equipment. And said, what do you got? So he starts off with the stove. And we decided we'll take the stove. And then we started something else. Did you ever see the new refrigerators? What do you got? Well, they had gas refrigerators. I looked over the the picture. I said, gee, Ma, you ought to get this. My brother Herman, who was very cautious, we can't afford it. My brother Jack said nothing. I said, we'll buy it. He said, well, how are we going to pay? Don't worry, we'll pay it out. Because you could pay it out those days, $2 a week, 50 cents, 100. She bought that. So she had the refrigerator. We put that. Now it was a beautiful white thing, pretty. Works on gas. We got the stove. And I think the next thing was the dryer, the clothes dryer. Oh, a washing machine. That we had in the cellar. We got the gas-driven washing machine and a dryer. Well, she was in heaven. Usually she was washing everything by hand. Now she's got it still. Beautiful. And I remember paying it off, and it just happened. And everybody said, gee, you spent a lot of money. I said, it's my mother. We'll work it out. I was never afraid to take a chance, something new. I always felt I could fall back, if worse comes to worse, to selling. Always sell something. As long as you feel you can sell.
Can you describe an average evening meal that you would have around that same time?
God, my mother made everything.
Right. What did she
My
have?
grandfather liked borscht. She made borscht. I liked cold spinach soup. She made cold spinach soup. The boys might want a steak. There's a steak. Somebody else wanted cereal with strawberries and bananas. So she'd make it all.
But for one meal, you couldn't all make your special orders, did you?
That's what she did.
Oh.
Everybody got what they wanted.
Okay, how about a Shabbos Friday night meal? What did that look like?
There was always gefilte fish, chicken soup that you'd die for. I mean, Charlie used to make good soups. Boy, she could learn from my mother because we lived together for 3.5 years. And soup, chicken usually, delicious, with mashed potatoes and this and that, radishes, carrots, challah, great challah. She'd make her own challah. She'd make challah for a big one, and then little ones for each person. What else did we have? For
Brisket?
dessert, what did she have?
Brisket? Did you have brisket?
Brisket.
No, I said for dessert.
No.
Oh, brisket, nothing to it. I'm telling you, melt in your mouth. And she knew when she went shopping what was good. You couldn't sell her, give her a piece of meat that wasn't a good piece of meat. She knew what meat was. She knew what the stuff was. And she used to laugh. I'd go with her sometimes because I was driving. And they used to love me. Because I say, hey, Mom, let's get some Jell-O. Okay, we had Jell-O, she'd put bananas in it, mix fruit, make fruited Jell-O.
Sure.
But it wasn't.
With raisins.
She would make it from scratch.
From scratch.
Right.
Yeah, and she'd slice the bananas and mix it all up. Delicious.
What did
they have it here once a week.
What did she use for the gelatin part?
Jell-O.
She's got a kosher.
So when did your homes all stay kosher? I mean, here we're not in a kosher establishment. At what point
it's kosher.
Here?
No, yeah, no,
No.
not here. There's some There's some stuff I'll eat and stuff that I won't eat.
Right.
There's some days they have pork. I don't.
I know.
I'll have
but
fish.
did everybody in this circle of friends, did everybody keep kosher homes?
Some of them did. In fact, I had a neighbor. We had kosher all the time. I had a neighbor when I moved here, who Jack Smith and his wife Bert Smith. He's bad. He's losing his memory, and she won't come here because she says it's strafe. So we said to her, "Cook here. You got a kitchen." Now my girl is Catholic. Charlotte told her how to make chopped liver. She makes chopped liver now. You could die for it. In fact, I had somebody visiting it. I said, "Have a little liver." Who made this? Griffith. You know, soup. She could make soup out of anything, and it would be delicious. You like shav?
Yes.
Well, she made cold. Some people like it hot.
I like it cold.
Ice cold in the wind. I remember when I first moved into Somerset Street. I went to work, and Sean was home with the baby, and I came home one day. The first day I had really come home, and she puts a plate of cold spinach soup. My mother taught how to make it. I take diced cucumbers and diced radishes, mixed it up with a bag of black bread and butter. Boy.
But chav is made not with spinach, but rather with sorrel. It's made with sorrel. Sorrel is like spinach, but it's not spinach.
You guys, I don't know.
Huh?
All I know is it was delicious.
Delicious.
And
I
Barry
make-
Eisenstein, the doctor, when we used to have the antique show at the Kadima every year, we had a woman by the name of Sally Cutner. Boy, I can remember sometimes. Sally Cutner was used to have sell antiques. She would be the charge of it. She was on the directors. So we would rent out the sofa Sunday and Monday, and she'd get a bunch of other antique people, rings, all kinds of antique things. We'd make a lot of money, and we'd end up with a couple of $1,000s for the sisterhood. Okay. To this day, they got plenty of money because they did that. And Charlotte would handle the kitchen. She'd make soups, and Barry used to come with a jar. After he'd have it, first he'd buy the soup, then before he went home he'd say, "Charlotte." So she'd fill him up a jar and he'd throw her a couple of bucks because he loved her spinach. And she had spinach soup, pea soup. Nobody makes it like that. It's really homey made stuff. And what else did she make? Oh, a cabbage soup, which was some chuck inside. You know, the kind of stuff that you can really enjoy.
So on this subject, what was Pesach like?
Pesach. Well, my grandfather was living with us the first year. My grandmother. We used to have it in our house on Dickinson Street. We had it we had it also on Oakland Street. It would start in the kitchen with the kids, into the dining room, all the way into the living room, all around. We would have 65 people. My mother would cook for all of them. We used to have a Seder that started at night and probably ended up at 11, 12 o'clock at night. We said every poshik you could think of. Every song you had to sing, we sung. All the kids were asleep by that time. And we'd still be there talking and laughing and joking. And she'd made everything.
Did you have 2 seders?
You did it for 2 nights or 1 night?
2 nights.
65 each time?
And what happened after your grandparents passed on? Did your
Well,
parents
my
keep it?
my grandmother died in 1933, a year before my father. And my grandfather died in 1939 in the hospital. He was there. We came to visit him. He was feeling good. It was a Saturday night. Everything's fine. He says, "Tomorrow you'll pick me up and take me home." We went home. The telephone is ringing. We're sorry to advise you, after you left, your grandfather died. And he was sitting there talking and laughing and joking. But he had a great sense of humor.
That's a lovely way to die.
Yeah,
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 but you see.
In the middle of a joke.
yeah. Let me change the subject a little bit. A few more things. Did you want to
Yeah,
say that?
no. I have more questions that I have to do. So don't change the subject.
Yeah.
I still want to stay in the house. Do you remember your mother ironing and sewing?
Oh, sure. She was a great seamstress. She could
So-
make shirts. She could make shirts.
So
And when you were-
was the sewing
kids, she
machine
made clothes for us.
was the sewing machine up all the time?
Yeah.
Which room was it in?
Once in a while, she might close it, but she could.
What room was it in?
It was in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
We had a big kitchen.
And
we had a kitchen longer than this.
uh-huh.
It was the whole width of the house and about almost the same depth, at least 15 feet. I used to play tennis in the kitchen. We had the cabinets, and I'd take the tennis ball and I could hit it back
Up
and
against the
forth.
town. So there was a corner of this kitchen that was devoted to sewing.
No, she'd have it set up that way. She'd flip it open, take pick it up, bring up the thing from inside the thing, and sew, close it, put it away.
Uh-huh. And ironing? Do you remember where she did ironing?
She's ironing too.
Where? The
In
kitchen.
the kitchen.
On an ironing board or on a table?
On the iron board. She had the iron board. She'd hold it in the cabinet, the hallway cabinet. There was a cabinet that was pretty big, and we had a lot of room there for things. And yeah,
The ironing board was a wooden table?
No, it was regular ironing.
It was a
board.
metal one?
I don't know if it was metal or not. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. It must have been. I don't recall it.
Don't recall. So do you remember the irons she used? Do you remember when she had to, not an electric iron?
You know, she started off with a regular iron, a cast iron one,
Yeah.
and about the time I bought her the refrigerator and all that stuff, I think she switched to electric.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
She didn't have the kind that steams.
Right, I understand.
They didn't have those
Right.
then.
Did she teach you how to iron? Did you learn how to iron?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. No big deal.
Did since she had boys, right? Only boys?
No, she had my sister and
Oh.
3 boys.
So do you remember her teaching your sister how to do sewing things?
I don't remember.
Uh-huh. Okay.
This is an unusual question. Growing up and in the 30s and 40s and 50s, let's say, what would happen to people who had problems? Let's say alcohol problems, emotional problems in the community. Can you recall people like that? Neighbors, people in the community
Yeah.
who were alcoholics, let's say, or had problems. How'd the community deal with it? Or how would your family deal with people you knew who had problems?
Well, we didn't have any drunks in our family. My father never smoked. I never smoked. Yes, I did. Had a cigar once, got sick, and that was the last time I touched it. I must have been 13. The day I'd smoked a cigar. My brothers did smoke, but quit when the doctors told them it was very unhealthy. In the Army, you know, everybody smokes. When he got out of the Army, my brother Herman was feeling nauseous in his stomach. And the Helen Glickman, see,
Helen is
the sister,
is the sister.
Helen Glickman was
Okay.
the other doctor's, okay?
Okay.
So she told him, Herman, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to die fast.
I think Ken's question has to do with people with serious problems.
People with serious problems, how were they handled in the community?
Like,
All right.
like mental health issues.
Mental problems.
Well, in mental health problems, if the doctor said you should be in an institution, we had Northampton, and that had a hospital
State hospital.
for people that had.
Did you know people who were sent there?
And what happened was, later on, these last generation or two, they said that these people should have a right to get out of those institutions. And they closed down the Northampton State Hospital and put these people out, and most of them became homeless on the street. It's a shame.
In Springfield too? It happened in Northampton, in Springfield.
Well, we sent them there.
Yeah, yeah.
So the people that came back couldn't cope. Some of them did have any training. had never gone to really any kind of a school that meant something. Maybe a couple of them were decent and could get a job, but it was very difficult. They really put a strain on the community because the hospital at least took care of them, but they weren't taking care of them properly. And as a result, the backlash was get them out where somebody take them. Some of them went back to their families and probably straightened out a little bit. As far as the drunkenness, I never got involved with that, so it didn't bother me. I never really go. Some of them had mental problems, and
Do you remember back in the 30s, though, and the 30s and the 40s? You know, the village idiot, so to speak. You know, did you have people who were like unusual and didn't fit in?
Yeah.
How did the community support them or not?
I don't remember. I really don't know.
You must have had schnorrers and beggars. Was that
Oh,
going?
yeah. You had people on the street asking for money. Yeah, we had people doing that. Yeah.
You recall this from Ferry Street, from those days, or
Those
later?
days, you didn't have on Ferry Street. That was past. Most Jewish people managed to get jobs. They seem to have stronger mentalities, per se, than the general public. I don't remember too many idiots on the streets. They'd come to shul. They'd eat there for breakfast. They'd stay for lunch sometimes. Sometimes a rabbi would give them a few bucks. Sometimes I'd give them a few. We kept trying to keep them out of trouble. And if they needed something, so I remember giving away shirts, coats, shoes, 1,000 things. I'd bring up a box of stuff there that I felt I couldn't use anymore and let them have it. And they all took them and used them. To this day, when Charlotte passed away, I must have given away $20,000 at least in clothing. She had handbags, $400, $300, $200 handbags. If she had like the handbag, buy it. I never said no to her. She had beautiful gowns. I remember for one bar mitzvah, she bought a gown in Florida from the Jacobson department store. I think it was over $1,000. We gave it away. She had a fur coat, mink coat. I think she paid $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000. She wanted to give it to her hairdresser when she passed away, so I gave it to the hairdresser. I gave away all her costume jewelry to the home. They sold it in about a week. All the Charlotte Bloom's jewelry, they must have been. All I know is I said to somebody a couple weeks ago, how'd you go? It's all gone. What do you mean? So everything went. They grabbed it. Stuff she paid $100 and maybe sold it for $10. Who knows?
Whatever. Yeah.
They were happy for the money they got. I got a big letter thanking me. I guess I sent a ton of stuff to the Salvation Army. I guess it's, what are you going to do with it?
Of course. I want to ask you, you've seen a lot of changes in the Jewish community. You've seen a lot of things happen.
Let's take
I want you to give me your thoughts about
the intermarriage.
Well, yeah, but I wasn't going there, but you can go there. I was thinking about how you see the future from your perspective now. What do you see in Springfield and Long Meadow? You know, from what's going to be
I'll
happening
tell you.
here?
There's going to be continuous intermarriage. Can't help it. I don't know if my grandchildren will marry Jewish girls. I have no idea. Well, let's take my niece, the one that's the brain with the computer.
Mm-hmm.
She met a fellow that was out of the Navy who got into NASA work, where he goes to skies and goes down. He's not Jewish. He never was any kind of a religion. His family never went anywhere. So what happened? They got married. He's retired now. Her family, she's helped some of the kids go to college because she's got a lot of money. Not only that, but he goes to synagogue with her. He's Christian, doesn't even know it. But the synagogue they go down in Fort
Myers?
Fort
Dix?
Fort Myers. Yeah.
Myers, when they started going there, they found they needed help. He became the official handyman to take care of all their troubles. If something is bad, he makes it right. He knows air conditioning, he knows computers, he knows everything. He's an engineer. And they consider him part of the congregation.
Focus back on Springfield.
So tell
Now
us
we'll get to
what
there.
do you see happening in Springfield and Long Meadow in terms of the Jewish
Okay.
community?
Now, one niece married a dentist, Jewish boy, lives in New York, fine. The other one married a Jewish boy and had 2 children. Well, wait a second. Let's take the dentist. One daughter, intelligent, smart, went to Harvard, married a Christian boy. She has 3 sons, brings them up Jewish. He doesn't care. God bless you. She runs it. The other son married a Hawaiian or some Oriental type who family is in the real estate business in Denver, Colorado. I don't know how rich they are, but they must be very wealthy. And he met the daughter. She had 1 child, but the husband was gone somewhere. And they fell in love, and he married her. They now have a child. I'm sure that child is not going to be brought up Jewish. It was a boy, maybe, but so that takes care of them. Now we go to the other family. There are twins, 2 of them. She has 2 girls. One of them went to work for the government in Germany, and when she came back after 2-3 years, she'd met this fellow who was something with the army, I don't know. They decided to get married. He was not Jewish too. They have no children. She came down with cancer, but she lived through it. And now what's she doing? She's working in Washington, D.C. I think it's a government work or something. He's overseas in Iraq, working for some big company at a terrific salary because he's not in the army anymore. They will never have any children. And they're happy. His name is John. I've met him. Nice guy. The other girl married also a Goyish fellow. She has a boy and 2 girls. The boy became bar mitzvah. The girls, one wants to be an actress, and the other one, I forget, which she's too young maybe. He is in charge of some kind of a thing where there's a lot of people working for him. I think it has to do with protecting estates and colleges and all the grounds and all that stuff. And he's a nice guy too, but no religion.
With the closing of the 3 synagogues in Springfield, what do you see in the future of the Jewish community here? That's what I want to
It will be helpful because I think that as joining, they will have more strength to continue as an Orthodox, because the other 2 synagogues, the only members were really older people. This way, we have a fellow from the high school, from the school here, that is Yaakov. He's got some trouble with his legs. He's got to have some operations, but he has brought together the youngsters from all the schools, from all the synagogues, and they meet at the Kadima. And I can see when we build this new one in Long Meadow, if he keeps up with his work and he stays healthy enough, we will have another KYPL, if you want to call it that, where they will grow up into being teenagers revolving around Judaism, because you got the JCC, you'll have the Sinai, you have the Bethel, you'll have the Alliance. There's all these things, the Jewish Home, all these other things. So it'll be a growth in the area. Now, the only thing that's going to hurt us is the fact that these kids go to college that are not Jewish, marry non-Jews, go to different parts of the country where they haven't got friends and relatives, and that could be a weakening situation. So, there you are. So, what we've got to do is try to find some businesses that will keep the locals here. Now, Springfield is on a rebirth. They're beginning to do things. They're beginning to talk about building. They're going to rebuild the Union, the railway station there we have downtown. You know that? Oh yeah, they're just making a deal where somebody's coming in from out of town and going to rebuild this thing and making it offices and stores and all kinds of stuff right down where that station is. If we can get more businesses, or another company is moving in for this area that's going to hire maybe up to 500 people for working its stuff, and if we can get more people and some activity, we'll get better stores. We might get some stores downtown because it'll be closer to where they work. You might get people that will go to college and come back here. You might have a chance, depending on what happens to Springfield. If Springfield doesn't do that, you're going to have a gradual decrease of Jewish people.
Well, what that sounded like was a gradual decrease of any kind of people.
What?
It seems to me that it would be the gradual decrease of any young population, not just Jewish.
If you can't supply the jobs.
If there are no jobs here, it's not just the
We've
Jewish.
got to make jobs.
Yeah.
That's
So in
important.
the case of your son, when he came back, there was a job for him.
That's right.
You had a company, a family business.
That's right. If I didn't have that, he probably wouldn't have stayed here.
Right.
He'd have gone to New York or because
So-
he could have gone anywhere.
So
Boeing Aircraft wanted to give him a job when he left the Army as vice president. Why? Because they saw what he did
Right.
for 1 year, the second year that he was in the Army, they flew him around the country to different factories to find out if the contracts were right. He had a right to cancel them, to do all this other stuff. So he had a lot of connections and power.
Right.
So,
But the family businesses are gone.
what?
There are
There are
fewer.
very few family businesses. There are few family businesses,
The Grodsky family is still in business.
but there are not many, right?
Well, we're thinking also up in our area. The August family had a family business. Not anymore. There's
Well, they
nothing
sold it.
else.
It's gone,
Gone.
gone.
Gone. So
How are you going to do it? You can't, your kids are, unless your kids don't want to go to college,
uh-huh.
see, or go to local colleges. Now that's where WNEC makes a big difference.
What's your connection now? You started by telling us with the law school here.
Yeah.
You have a
See,
connection
what happened was
there.
this. Northeastern University in Boston had a law school here at the YMCA, the old YMCA, on Chestnut Street. And I couldn't go to college. I had families and everything to worry about. So I went for 5 years nights. And a lot of people went there. Judge Cooley went there for 5 years. Umansky went there. Judge Keedy went there. I think Frank, what's his name? He was a mayor of Springfield, math.
Menino?
Frank. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So I'm saying these people got out of NEC and figured I don't have to go anywhere. I'll stay here. So what they've done is they go to Westfield, they go to Northampton, but they're in the Pioneer Valley. If we could help that school, now it's going to have a school of pharmacy. I just donated a bunch of money to the school because my brother-in-law was a pharmacist. And they're good friends of mine. So they invite me to all the affairs and everything. So to make a long story short there, if they go to that school and come out, they're apt. Because their families are here, that's why they came here. They're apt to stay here. If they build up industry, a factory here, a store there, people will get jobs. And then you'll start seeing families going down the line where the son says, hey, Dad, I like this business. Good, it's yours now when you grow up. That's what's going to happen. There is hope, but it will take another 4 or 5 years to make sure we're right.
I'd like to perhaps conclude by asking you if you'd like to kind of talk about the principles that you've lived by. What has guided you in your life that you'd like the next generation to know about, that have been important to you?
First, don't get divorced so fast. Too many people get married, 6 months later divorcing. It's ridiculous. When I practiced law, I had a lot of people come to me for divorces. And I listened to their story, and at least 10 places, at least 10 of my, I had a lot of divorce cases. I'd say, bring your wife in or bring your husband in. They'd bring them in just to hear it. I'd listen to them, the husband, the wife, and when I get through talking to them and discussing things, they'd go back together again and stay together. I must have lost at least 10, 12 divorce cases I could have made money on. I felt sad that these people didn't know how to communicate, husband and wife. He thought he was brought up with his family, and this was his family, and they didn't. And when I got through talking, they'd thank me. I used to get Christmas cards all the time from them.
Okay, so that's one value.
That's one value. The second value, like my mother said, don't go to sleep, Matt. That's part of the value. Then I'd say, what do you like to do? My grandchildren didn't want to go to school. My son sent them all over the country to Wilbraham Academy, out west to schools, Vermont Academy. They'd get a good mark, like an A or a B, and they say, I don't like it, quit. And I said to him, Elliot, don't get excited about it. He said, you know, but I get mad. I says, you're not going to get mad, it won't help you. This is not the army. We say do it, and you do it. Kids are different. What you got to do is say, what do you like to do? If you find out what you want to do, that's the most important thing in life. If it's opening up businesses, do it. You'll find a way if you want to do it. If you want to build a business, if you want to be an architect, you got to find what you like to do. Now what's happening? Now that they're a little bit older, one is going to be an electrical engineer. He couldn't wait to come over a couple of days ago and show me his marks. A's and B's. He's happy. He's 22. If he could have found this out when he was 15, he'd be that much further ahead. And I said to him, Matthew, stick with what you're doing. When you get to it, you'll have better things going all the time, and you're going to enjoy your life. He said, I know, Grandpa. I think I found myself. And the other one's going to the oil tech, got a girlfriend, goes to UMass. He can't wait to finish college there so he can go to UMass and be in that college. So he's finding things he wants to do. That's what we got to do with our kids. Treat them like you treat a smart person, not a dumbbell. They can come home with ease. Why? Not because they can't do it. They don't want to do it. What you got to do is find out what they want to do, and that's why you got to be smart with kids today. They got the internet, they got the computers, they got everything. You got to show them what do they really like to do. I have a great nephew. My sister died, and it was her grandson, Josh Diamond. He went to Western State College. Didn't know what he wanted. Got involved in computers. Now he's graduated. They've got him on contract to do all of their service work on computers there. He's got a private business of computers. Talked to me a week or two ago. He's so happy. He's pushed. He married a Chinese girl, smart as a whip. There's another thing. She's a wonderful woman. He brought her over one time, and I spent an hour talking to her. She was smart. And I said to him, Josh, you did the right thing. You found out something you like to do. You're enjoying it. And your wife is going with you on it. God look at it. You know what I mean? The dentist that married my niece in New York, wonderful dentist. His father was a dentist. And he did a wonderful job because one of my other nieces went to him and said, he's the best dentist I've ever had in my life, mechanically with his fingers and everything. Well, he got tired of dentistry. He liked computers and he liked technical stuff. Now he has a crew on the side that's doing all the installations of wiring and interneting and internet and computers, and he's so happy that he loves to do. So he just recently sold his business part-time. Got another dentist in, and he spends his time with all this other stuff. What are you going to do? You got to find out what you like to do.
I heard you say a little earlier that it's very important to be able to take risks. Do you want to take risks?
Yes.
You want to talk about that? Is that an important value?
No. It doesn't scare me. Some people are afraid to take a risk.
No, I'm asking if it's an important value.
It's an important value for people to succeed, to be able to take risks?
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. First, if they know what they like to do, they will have a certain inborn instinct to try to improve themselves so they can make a living at it. You have to find somebody who will encourage you. It could be your wife, it could be your girlfriend, it could be your mother, it could be your father, whoever it is that can say, try it. Because if you don't do it, you'll never have the guts to try something. Go ahead. If you're always going to be a shy violet and stay in a corner, how are you going to get there? You might want to be an actress. Then go out and act. Well, all I can is bit parts. Take an amateur job. Do anything. But try it. If you can't stand it, maybe it's not for you. I tried all these things. I was never afraid to take a chance. Other people are afraid. My brother Jack, God bless him, never wanted to take a chance. He didn't have the confidence in himself to do it. He could have done it, but he didn't have the confidence. And the wife, the first wife, who died very young, she had one child, then she had the other one, but she was sick as a dog. She had something of the liver. What?
Diabetes?
What?
Cirrhosis?
Correct.
Cirrhosis?
Cirrhosis of the liver, yeah. Never drank, never smoked, but she got cirrhosis of the liver for some reason. And for 9 years he was taken into hospitals. So can you blame him if he never had any real drive to do something? It was always to take care of her. And she was smart. If she had been healthy, he'd have gotten somewhere. He could have passed the bar. I passed it. He took it with me. But he just didn't have the, with her in his mind.
He was worn out. He was worn out.
And any other important values?
You got to know the value of $1. You can't go wasting it, because there's times when you'll need that dollar for something important. So you got to learn to save. And there's a lot of kids today that think it grows on trees. No.
You think the kids are spoiled today?
They're spoiled. Well, we lived in an era where there's no depressions or anything like that. Now they're beginning to worry about it. See? If they'd have worried about it earlier, look at what Bush did. When he came into office, Clinton had left him with $1 trillion of surplus and a balanced budget. First, he gave away the $1 trillion to the rich people. Canceled it. Wouldn't that have? If he didn't know the value of $1, he just said, $1 trillion, that's a lot of money. It's 1,000 billion, not 1,000 million, $1,000 billion. We would never gotten into this mess. He never read a book. He never watched television. He never read a newspaper. He would say, what's the story? All right, sign it. Goodbye. Sign it. Why? Because I found out that the governor of Texas never does anything. just signs papers. The vice lieutenant governor does all the work, does all the thinking, and throws a paper. Here it is. It does this and this. Okay. So when he came to president, he thought he did the same thing. The vice president do it all, and the vice president did, but the wrong thing. Yeah.
Okay, we want to thank you very much.
This is Charlotte's.
Grandmother and grandfather on her mother's side.
The Krasners.
Yeah, that's Bert Krasner's grandfather.
And grandmother?
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't remember his name.
Okay.
There.
This is
Yeah, I came home
your daughter Ronnie, who was a
I came
singer.
home one day from Chicago, and she's sitting there playing a viola. She always played the piano. And I said, "What's this?" Well, they need one in the high school band, and I offered to Brennan. In 2 weeks, she was in the band playing the viola.
Is that Elliot and Ronnie?
This here. Is
Over
my
here,
brother
over here.
Jack's wife. That's the Whites, and the little one here is the one who's the computer genius.
This is Jack's daughter. These are Jack's daughters.
What they?
Jack's daughters.
Yeah, Jack's daughter.
Here also?
And let's see, the one up above is.
Why don't you go through?
This one here is Ronnie when she was a baby, and Elliot when he was a baby.
And this?
And this is the twins. The one who's this one here is the one who husband's a dentist, and this one here is the one whose whose kids want to be one wants to be a actress. The other one's.
But who are they? I can't remember who they are.
What's they?
Whose
Who are
children
they?
are
What's
they?
their connection to you?
This is Herman's twin daughters.
Oh, got it. Hmm.
These are my two kids.
And these are yours
These
too.
are Jack's two kids.
These are yours here.
That's Elliot, and that's Ronnie.
And this is you down here?
This is Elliot. Wait a second. This is me out of high school. Oops.
Uh-huh.
And
These are your grandchildren?
And this is Elliot. Wait a second.
No, these are the
No,
grandchildren.
these are Matthew and Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Kidding. That's Charlotte's mother and father.
Charlotte's parents.
Yeah.
Which one is Charlotte?
Yeah. The other one,
This is Charlotte?
Charlotte, and the other one is
Charlotte
Annette,
is the older.
and she
And
was
Annette to
married
the left.
to Macy.
Charlotte's parents. In
Yeah, I
Springfield.
remember buying her this. Took her to New York for that.
What is going on here?
Hmm.
This is your wife and
Yeah.
son?
Yeah. He was been 2 years old or 3 years old. And Ron.
Naomi Bloom and Ronnie
Wallace.
Wallace. And
That's me, recent years.
Paul and Charlotte Bloom.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I know the name. Okay, this is permission,
Paul.
so that way, you know, 100 years from now. someone
Paul
says,
and
"Yeah,
Elliot Bloom.
That person, I say, yeah. You're
Elliot and Paul Bloom. From the right, Paul, Elliot, and the eldest son, Matthew.